extending that into a 2-score game again. Had they got to stop right there, whether they scored on the next possession or not, I think that would have changed the complexity of the game. However, even with that, they still gave themselves a chance at the end, made some plays there at the end of the game, some critical throws, big-time catches by the players at the end of the fourth quarter, gave themselves a chance, and that's what you want from a competitor standpoint. As a fan, you want to see your team compete. Now, the bad side of all that is kind of what I've alluded to is you gotta get off the field in that instance. You can't allow them to go 16 plays. You can't allow them to extend drives. You can't give them a touchdown and in respect, at least hold them to 3. On top of that, when you capitalize momentum, good teams are going to capitalize on that and maintain that throughout the rest of the game. And I think both teams, you can see both teams are teams searching for ways to find wins. They don't know how to win yet. And I hate to, how you say pro team don't know how to win. Well, we've seen this time and time again with the Titans, not necessarily Jacksonville, but the Titans where they're in games and they find ways to quote-unquote lose it. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case entirely here because I felt like they fought back in there, especially in the fourth quarter, to give themselves a chance to win. But if you go back a quarter before, they gave that game kind of away when they fought to get back into it. So that's my take on it from that standpoint, and then we'll get to it a little bit more.
I think this team was very lifeless. It was flat at the beginning of the game, and that really just killed them. I mean, the defense, I am perplexed. I know there's injuries and stuff, but I just don't know what happened to the fire that was in this defense that we've seen in other games. There's just it felt like there was no sense of urgency on either side of the ball out of the gate for the first half. Mm-hmm. Just no sense of urgency. But specifically this defense, which has been for the most part, for most of the year, something this team could hang its hat on week in and week out, has just completely been shut down. I mean, they've been bullied for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it's kind of crazy to see that kind of regression as the season goes on. And again, no L'Jarius Sneed, no Amani Hooker. You're down to Luke Gifford and Jerome Baker, Daryl Worley, Mike Brown. But today it was Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Roger McCreary, making mistakes. Jeffrey Simmons made a few stops, but also missed a few tackles. Arden Key and Harold Landry, they're just not setting the edge very well in run defense. And then now on top of that, 7 total pressures on Mac Jones today is not enough. It's not enough from this defense. And listen, I agree with you. The offense showed life coming out of the half. They made some adjustments. They pulled some trick plays out of the hat. They've tried to move the ball up and down the field. But when it's needed, this defense just doesn't show up. And I just don't know what the issue is there. Surely it can't just be all injuries and all player-driven. But at the end of the day, you've really set yourself up for a critical Week 18 game. You're at home. Not going to have a lot of fans in the stands, I'd imagine. And on top of that, you're in the Oilers uniforms against a team that thinks they should have the Oilers uniforms. And if you lose, I don't know. I think everything's on the table still for this entire. And listen, I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying they should, regardless of a win or a loss. But we have to be realistic. In the NFL, it's a business, and sometimes, owners are fans. And if she's sitting there and that's going to be the result that she sees on the field against the Texans team that may still be playing at starters because they're not playing very well right now, and you kind of need a get-right game heading into the playoffs. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, not saying it should happen, but I can remember there's times last year everybody thought Mike Vrabel was safe, and then he ended up not being safe, and that just kind of happens. Like, this was not the performance you really needed, I feel like, even if, regardless of win or loss, is not the team, if you're a coach, is not the team performance you really needed going into the Texans game.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, again, I'll never speak in definitive terms when it comes to the NFL because crazier things have happened. But from my perspective, if you do that, does that give you a sense of comfort as a fan that they know what direction they're going, regardless of what's going on this year and what the quick change? if would that give you confidence in what direction ownership is like, I just got a new GM, I just got a new head coach, I'm going to clean up and start fresh. To me, even as a former player, let alone being a fan of the franchise, that wouldn't bode confidence. That would leave me thinking you second guess your own decisions. So how do I trust you going forward that you're going to make the right decision?
Right.
So, but again,
it's a lose-lose kind of situation.
Right. And I would never speak in definitive terms because, like, to your point, it is a business. And I have seen crazier things happen. For instance, when Vrabel took over, I was one of the people saying, I don't see it happen. He just won a playoff game. But then again, the GM was new and he got his guy in and got Vrabel in, and they had some success early. And then we saw how that all played out. And I was one of the people saying, I just don't see it happening. He just won a playoff game for the first time in how many years at that point, He had turned the franchise. The players seemed to play for him, and I didn't know all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes with the contracts and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. My point is, I don't know as a fan how that would look. Now, I think it's probably going to be on both sides, Zach. I think it's going to be on both sides. You're going to have those fans that are going to say, he's not the one, he can't do it. And you're going to say, those fans are kind of like me, like, that don't bode confidence. Did you settle for this guy last time? All that time it took you to find a head coach, all those interviews, and you're firing him after 1 year. That, to me, that would kind of leave me like, dang, who's making decisions and the process and all that? It wouldn't give me confidence in the ownership as moving forward. So again, that's me, and I'm a little bit of a homer in all this, but. And a little cynical when it comes to letting people go after 1 year when
I'm with you.
That gets turned around.
I'm just saying we got to at least entertain that possibility because right now
that all bets are off.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more apparent that like I kind of said last week, and I said it on Football and Other F Words this week, is like if I was doing opposition research and let's say my defendant. I'm defending Brian Callahan from being fired. I'm making the case. So I'm going to do opposition research, right? Yeah. That folder for reasons for him to be fired is pretty thick.
Yeah.
And the folder over here that's like, you shouldn't fire him is all about, stability, hope, patience and all that kind of stuff, which is not very tangible. And there are a few things that this team has improved on throughout the year. But I just look at it and maybe I just see that Texans loss this end of the season in an Oilers uniforms in front of the home. Like if I was the Titans right now, I wouldn't be doing the Oilers uniforms.
No, I would.
You would?
I would.
Ooh.
I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, it's a decision made before the season, right? You can't back out of it.
Can you not change it?
No, and it has a way to give.
It's not like the fans are going to be affected by it. The hundreds of fans that will show up.
It has a way of giving you some energy too, wearing those things. But to your point, I think if you talk about that folder to why keep him, I can add in there a bunch of things that's beyond his control, like the roster, like the injuries, like the lack of production from the offensive line. Even today, the injuries that have mounted up, the free agent injuries that we had on defense side of the ball. Like you can make a case that's substantial to say, he dealt with a lot this year and he's able to maintain. Now, to your point, on the other side, maintain, how competitive was that maintaining? Like, did you see improvement from your team despite all the other things that could have gone your favor, meaning lack of depth offensive line and offensive line play, quarterback play, injuries, the stuff he can't control. He didn't even draft them. That wasn't his picks. Now, he'll have a whole offseason and free agency and all that kind of stuff. Well, maybe. Who knows? But theoretically, he will. And then I think you can have a truer assessment. Again, this is a show me business. Like it is. You have to show me. We know the world is instant gratification. You got to win now. You got to produce now. And I get all that. But I also have seen people like Campbell down there in Detroit Lions who came in, had a plan, worked the plan out with his GM, and they have seen this plan to come to fruition. And I think that should be the norm as opposed to what has been going on with, that's not working, bye, try another one. That's not working, bye, try another. At some point, you can't just keep throwing spaghetti against the wall and see if it sticks. Sometimes you got to just make it stick, cook it longer, and make it work. You see what I'm saying? So we'll see how they work it out.
Well, and the franchises that do that are the most dysfunctional franchises in the NFL, right? And we saw one franchise kind of get rescued out of that hole with the Texans because they were doing the same thing with David Culley and Lovie Smith. They were the most directionless franchise in the NFL 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then they hired DeMeco Ryans, and they hit on a quarterback. And they hit on a bunch of other picks as well. Nick Caserio deserves more than just landing C.J. Stroud.
They made some good moves for agency.
Yeah. But that lightning in a bottle that you don't typically see from a rookie quarterback kind of lifted them out of those depths. You don't see that often. So this is going to be a tough spot for the organization and Brian Callahan because, let's say, and, this is all speculative, but I think it's fair to say if they lose to the Texans next week, finish with 3 wins, all bets are off, right? Nobody can sit here with security and say, no one's going to lose their jobs. It's all status quo. This is not what they envisioned going in.
Right.
But it is more likely than not that Brian Callahan is back next season, I think we would say. There's been some reporting on that.
But it's like I go from, I'm viewing it if the Texans lost, I view it from like 60-40, he's back. Yeah. And that's mainly the big gap, that small of a gap is mainly because we have no clue what Amy Adams Strunk is thinking. We know what Rain Carthon's leaking to the media. We know what Chad Brinker's leaking in the media. We know what they think, but that doesn't mean anything compared to what the owner thinks.
Yeah. If you see a game like the Redskins game, again, another quarterback that kind of flipped the franchise around, a game like that, or who was that last one? Last week even. If you see a game like that against the Texans, I think that's where you're like, what is she thinking, right?
A close loss, probably not as much, right? Like, what you're thinking.
Competitive loss, because she's probably going to be there. I mean, she's there, and it's Christmas, still New Year's. Who's going to be in the stands? You're out of the playoffs. Texans, we don't even know who's going to. Stroud probably not playing. I mean,
probably not. They've clinched the division. They're on a slide. They've lost 2 in a row. They're playing their worst football. So, but you would imagine
they slide last year and won 2 playoff games.
Yes, you would imagine that they will at least rest some starters.
So that she could be looking out there and into the stands and like, man, we got to do something. However, business-wise, this is about the long game. This is about that stadium that's just east of the stadium, right? It's about that too. So she's got to be smart like that and thinking about the ticket sales, the corporate sales, all the things that go into all that.
And really, to your point, like firing Brian Callahan let's say she does. Well, who are you going to get that's better? Right? I mean, to be honest with you, you would be either bringing in an unknown, bringing in a retread, or you really need to have like Ben Johnson, basically half his name on the contract before you even fire Brian Callahan, really.
Yeah.
And you're still going to have the same issues under Ben Johnson, I mean, to be honest, because you look at what he looks for in a quarterback is the same thing that Brian Callahan's going to look for in a quarterback. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see like how that goes. But like it's either you only fire Brian Callahan if you have Ben Johnson, but also maybe if you wanted to hire Deion Sanders and add some real entertainment value. I mean, it probably wouldn't poorly, but at least you will be entertaining. But at the end of the day, and that kind of sucks. It seems like the Titans are always in this weird situation where the argument is, but who's better? Right? Like, that's not a great argument for anything. Like, okay, you fire your head coach, but nobody's really better, so you're just holding on to someone. You have this quarterback. Well, no one's anybody's really better, so you might as well hold on to him. That's like not a way to also run an NFL franchise, but that's kind of the situation they find themselves year in and year out.
Oh, the only thing is, too, is and I was trying to look at the draft order. You know it probably better than I. The top 5 is
New England, Tennessee, Giants. If Cleveland loses today, they'll move ahead of the Giants and then the Raiders. So that will be your top 5.
The Giants beating the Colts today and the Titans lost moved the Titans up to the number 2 pick in the draft going into the regular season finale.
Of those top 5 picks, how many of them quarterback and coaches? Jacksonville probably going to be looking for a coach, not quarterback. I don't think quarterback.
I think Ben Johnson's a sneaky spot for Jacksonville because you got to think that he would love Trevor Lawrence.
So Giants definitely. Yeah. He's quarterback for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and those reports are everywhere. Everybody's saying that the owner's saying that they're going to keep the head coach, and I mean the head coach got a pretty commanding lead win today, so we'll see how that goes. But they need a quarterback for sure.
Raiders need a quarterback, but they just signed their coach. I don't know what they will do.
And they've won a couple games in the last couple weeks.
Yeah,
that have kind
that's
of
2 in a row.
plummeted them out of that top 3 discussion.
I think Titans, we're all agreed they'll go quarterback at some form or fashion, whether it's Kirk Cousins and a rookie or keep Rudolph and draft a rookie late. Whatever that looks like. Who knows? I think the Levis experiment is probably done. And then who was the 5th one?
So New England.
New England.
Yeah.
And
they're
not going to get a quarterback or a coach.
Right.
Yeah. Well, a lot to break down in that regard, as I think a lot of fans were paying more attention to what was going on at MetLife Stadium than at Everbank Stadium with the Giants. How about Drew Lock? 5 total touchdowns, just lighting up the Colts today for that win. Maybe Giants fans a little bit upset around the country, but the Titans do move up to the number 2 pick. Obviously, it's something that we will discuss, and we want to hear from you about it. 615-737-1045. We are also on 1045 The Zone TV, where you can jump in on the F&M Bank chat, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. I'm going to take your phone calls and get into more of that discussion on where the Titans currently stand in regards to draft order and what that might mean in terms of how they address the quarterback position after a 20-13 loss in Jacksonville this afternoon. We'll be right back. This is Titans Talkback on 1045 The Zone. Titans Talkback is presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Welcome back. Glad to have you with us as we react to the Titans' 20-13 loss at the Jaguars. They fall to 3-13 with one game remaining in the regular season. I know a lot of you want to talk draft order. The Titans currently pick at number 2 after the Giants. Shockingly, maybe it's not shocking that the Colts lost a game, but the way it happened, 45 points, 5 total touchdowns from Drew Lock, 17 of 23, 309 yards, 4 in the air, 1 on the ground as the Giants shocked the Colts at MetLife Stadium, and it allows the Titans to move up to the number 2 pick. So if you want to chime in on that, talk about the game today, the regular season finale next week against Houston, we are all ears. 615-737-1045 as we go to the phones and lead off with Eric in Nashville, as we typically do. Hey, Eric.
Hey, guys. First of all, I want to wish you guys and all the listeners out there a very, very happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
Same
man.
to you, man.
Hey, guys, listen, I don't know if it was the conditions why we came out kind of flat today. I'm glad the team, especially offense, fought in the second half. I definitely thought the defense, especially second half, kind of got pushed around out there. But let me say this, guys. You know, I know a lot of people, some are happy we lost. We clinched last place. You know, it's frustrating here, Jacksonville celebrating the fact they swept us and everything, and I know a lot of people happy with that. I will never be happy with losing, guys, under any circumstances, guys, because to me, a lot of these people want us to, like, keep losing to get a high draft pick, and the same people just want to fire everybody, and I'm just not that mentality. The only person you could probably make a case probably deserves to be fired is the special teams coach, guys. And also depends on draft position. What's more important, trying to get a quarterback or trying to fix the right side offensive line? Those are other issues that you have to talk about. And also you have to wonder about, you know, with the way we've drafted, especially the first round the last few years, where we made the right pick. And, guys, I'm a glutton for punishment, but I will be at the last game of the year, guys, cheering the team on, even if I'm the only one out there. I always want us to win regardless. And I know Adrian Struck definitely wants us to win the last game, even though we are wearing those uniforms. I'm kind of surprised we didn't wear them one more time because you usually wear them twice. I guess they decided that next week was going to be the only game that we'd wear them. But, guys, hopefully I'm definitely going to be cheering for a victory, guys. Go Titans. Y'all take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody lose for the draft picks, and then on the flip side of that, people get mad. It seems like the team is throwing away the game, and I tell you, I can make the argument or case for why that's never the case from a player's perspective. But I don't know which to root for. It depends on what you want. I mean, do you want to be in a situation where you can take the number 1 player in this draft or the number 1 quarterback in this draft? I think everybody's assuming.
If they even think like that. I mean, to be honest, I know things have been out that, you know, conflicting reports, but, you know, Shadur Sanders is the only quarterback they're really interested in this draft. Okay, if that's true, that's fine. But that doesn't really include Brian Callahan's input yet because he's gone on the record a couple times now that he ain't even worried about the draft. So what if he gets in and says, Shadur Sanders does this wrong, Shadur Sanders, I don't like this. Yeah. And he's like, I may like another draftable quarterback later on. Maybe he likes Cam Ward, or maybe he's like, no, we need to get Derek Carr, you know, if he is cut because Derek Carr does all this really well. And we know, and we need to build a team that can win and not just put a quarterback in a situation where they may fail because the rest of the team isn't really up to snuff. I mean, we don't really know how Brian Callahan feels about this. And to be honest, anything you're hearing about the draft right now means nothing.
Nothing.
2 weeks before the draft, that's when the real stuff starts coming out. And you won't know anything until 2 weeks before the draft.
Yep. I agree. I think the other part of that is there any appetizing veteran free agent? Does he believe somebody like a Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, who's probably going to get released, Jones, I don't know, are they somebody that you can bring in to mentor a young guy as they progress to like you talk about, give somebody later in the draft, second, third round that you think can be like they thought Levis could be. He was a second round pick and things of that nature. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, how these workouts play out. I think if you're in a situation like, say, right now, if you got the number 1 pick overall and you're not in position for a quarterback, I think that plays into, does Travis Hunter become number 1 overall or something to that nature?
And does someone trade in front of you? Like, you know, hinging all your hopes on something that the draft is kind of out of your control for the most part. Like, you have to see how the board falls and how other teams react. We don't know if maybe, okay, let's say the Giants are at 3, the Patriots at 1. Well, the Patriots know you want a quarterback. The Giants need a quarterback. They're going to trade back to 3, and then boom, do the Giants take Shedeur, or do they take, Cam Ward? Then are you okay with the leftovers? Are you okay with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? That's the thing about draft talk and all this stuff. It's a lot of hypotheticals and ifs that we have to understand that we really know nothing right now. And that's not a great place to be in when you are a fan. Is like, I know everybody's, listen, I'm a big Shedeur Sanders guy, right? Last night's game does not dissuade me. That offensive line got used and abused by BYU. I mean, it was terrible.
It was terrible.
But you saw the stuff that makes Shedeur Sanders great. You saw him try to get out of structure, use his legs, and make plays downfield. You saw him go through his progressions. It wasn't the cleanest game or anything, but you saw what makes him great. But also, taking Shedeur Sanders and putting him on this team, you have to hit on every pick of your free agency by fixing the right line. You have to pick on your draft, or because this, no matter what happens, I don't think the timeline or the seat, I guess, gets reset for Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. I don't think they get 2 years of trying to figure out if Shedeur Sanders is the guy. This is their guy, and they pick him, and they play him, and if they're forced to play him, I guess maybe he's able to sit for a year. We don't know about that. Then. And you lose, your butt's gone. Like, you're out of there. That's just how the NFL works.
What happened to Matt Eberflus? Right? I mean, the slate was not wiped clean on Matt Eberflus because he got number 1 pick Caleb Williams in here. They got off to a nice start. Things trailed. Williams wasn't even the biggest problem about the Chicago Bears. They just kept losing games, and Matt Eberflus gets fired. Caleb Williams is going to have a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator in his second year as a pro. And if they have one of those top 2 picks, they're also going to be getting phone calls from all over the place. So they're gonna have options. So obviously it'll be something fans will be monitoring throughout the course of the next week or so. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. 615-737-1045 as we go back to the phones and get to Michigan, who is in the borough. Hey, Michigan.
Hi, guys. I'm going to be the voice of reason and positivity, as I often am, and say some nice things about the team and what I heard today. First of all, I got to tell Professor Dyson, I heard Brad Hopkins use the word behoove this morning on the radio. I thought you'd enjoy that. You and me might be the only people that spend as much time with our thesaurus as we should. That's a great job. Great job by Brad. I appreciate that if he's listening. I heard on the broadcast him say something Brian Callahan said that I thought was very telling. He said, we feel like we've got 10 to 12 cornerstone pieces on this team. I think they drafted 3 in this last draft, and by cornerstones, I mean, starting 22 guys you can trot out for 16, 17 games and feel like you can make the playoffs. I don't disagree with that statement. The thing I'm curious for your guys' take on here, really, and I started reading the YouTube chat, and then I thought better of it when my brain started to melt, is a lot of the talk about getting a quarterback, and you guys have already alluded to that a little bit. Do you think, A, that's what this team needs? Because I don't. This team has way more needs than a quarterback. I could start literally anywhere. Right side of the offensive line, outside edge, especially a nice pass rusher. Abdul Carter would be great for that. The secondary, we kind of don't know what we have in Snead. Brownlee looks like he's a good nickel corner, but I don't know that I trust him to cover the X or the Y. And there's some scheme stuff that bothers me, guys. Like, there's real questions about this coaching staff. I like the DC. But just give you one example, early in the fourth quarter, you're down 1 score. You've pushed them back. I can't remember if it was a sack or just a tackle for loss. You've got like 2nd and forever. I think it was 2nd and 20. And you're running a weak cover 3 concept with a single high and get beat for like 30 yards on a post and a dig, which is, something anybody can do in Madden, really. Little stuff like that bothers me. And I just wonder, we all think even if Rand's back, him and BC's hots are going to be, hotter than Mississippi bacon grease, this coming season. And it's going to be the hottest of hot. Is he the type of GM that's going to do something crazy, right? That's going to trade draft capital for Darnold, if Darnold's even available, which I don't think he's going to be. But if he is that the kind of splash he's going to look to make this offseason instead of trading back, getting 3 or 4 more players and thinking long term. Because listen, self preservation is a thing we all face in life every day and in our jobs. We've got to have a sense of that, I believe. And I'm going to run. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Thanks for the call, Michigan. Well, you wouldn't have to trade for Sam Darnold because he's on a 1-year deal. So if you're getting Sam Darnold, it means he's a free agent and you won the sweepstakes, or the Vikings didn't want to keep him and wanted to move towards J.J. McCarthy. But I get the premise of what Michigan is asking there. Could Rand Carthon make that big swing type of move? Could it involve draft capital? I mean, I'll hear from you guys, but I will err on the side of this team needs more draft capital than less at almost every turn.
Would agree with that. I would also say that having the best right tackle, or all the stuff all those positions that he named, they're all issues. I agree. But until you have the guy at quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. That's just plain and simple. You cannot compete in this league without a quarterback. I mean, even the Panthers, Bryce Young has played exceptionally well. They cannot compete with Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have to have a quarterback in this league. Is the most important position in all of sports, more than likely. And it's the most important position in football. And there's a difference between having a team that is contending every year and a team that's just either competing or in the bottom dwellers. Yeah. You have to have a quarterback. Now, is that to say that it has to be in this draft, or you have to go do it this way? No. But they are in desperate need. That is number one across the board, clear number one. They need a right tackle. Then you put right tackle, pass rusher on the same tier right below it. Then you got wide receiver. You got other issues. But you have to have a quarterback.
Yeah. I'll just throw a hypothetical out there, and I'm going to throw a name out there and see what you think. Would you make some moves for Trent Williams? If he's on the trading block in the draft day, and you can trade for him to come in and anchor that left side, move my man to the right, and you got 2 anchored tackles ready to go. And I'm saying that because 49ers have known to make a lot of moves in draft. And Rand came from that mold.
Maybe you, instead of going for Trent Williams, you go for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, or something to that effect. Again, to your point earlier, Zach, right for the break, is we don't know. There's a lot of time between now and then. We got to see what plays out next Saturday, Sunday.
Well, then we got to wait till next Tuesday. We got to make it through Black Monday, right?
Yeah,
you have to make it through the firings. Then that gives you a clear picture of where this team's, or at least where ownership's vision and head is at in this whole time. Because we still got it doesn't feel like a long time, but there's still a long time before all these decisions are made. We're talking about March is when, legal tampering kicks off, and then people are cut that you didn't expect to be cut or available via trade. We still got a long ways to go before figuring out. The first step is figuring out because you've already got your answer on the quarterback in-house. Neither of these guys are the guy for 2025. Even in a bridge concept kind of deal with Mason Rudolph, I'm out. You can't ask fans to show up opening day to watch Mason Rudolph next year.
He's a backup quarterback.
Yeah. But so you got that question figured out. The other question that's left to be answered is who's coming back on this staff. And then once that's figured out, then we can worry about how his free agency worked. And that includes front office staff and coaching staff.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things. I think, the quarterback thing is probably solidified. I don't think maybe Mason stays in a backup role depending on who they draft or sign or whatever. I don't know. I think that's a done deal. I think Callahan made that comment, no decision had to be made going forward with Levis, but that makes no sense if he's not playing the last few games. You thought Mason Rudolph gave you a better chance to win, but that speaks more volumes than anything. The other thing is with how the offseason is, where March 1st free agency opens up, I'll be interested to know, and that's probably going to be so much of the conversation over the next week or so, as to people I'm going to give Kirk Cousins, who's probably due a roster bonus or signing bonus come March 1.
And so is Carr. So Carr's got $10 million. So here's the thing on Carr. This is why I keep coming back to Carr, by the way, is because first off, Carr has a history with Brian Callahan. So does Stafford. There's rumors that maybe the Rams may be looking on to move on from Stafford because that's how they constructed their contract, right, over the offseason. The reason I say that Carr may be available and may be an option for this team, not necessarily saying that I would go this route, but if they cut him before, I believe, March 15th, they don't have to pay him a $10 million guaranteed part of their contract. So $10 more million becomes guaranteed. Then on top of that, if they cut him and designate him a post-June 1st designation, when June rolls around, they get $30 million in cap savings. And this is a team notoriously in cap hell and will probably be in a rebuild. It may be now a couple of years rebuild, but the following year in 2026, they'll have a huge set of cap savings. So that's why I think Carr's gone in New Orleans.
Well, that's my point is, would fans be good with a scenario where a Carr, Cousins, a veteran like that who's had some success in this league, even recent success? I think Carr, debatable between Vegas and New Orleans in his success rate. Would you be, as a fan, okay with that if, well, again, there's no guarantee those rookies are going to be like a Daniels or Stroud anyway. That you never know how they're going to plan out. But would you be okay with that being your quarterback for a year, 2 years, while you develop that young quarterback that's behind them, whether it be a Sanders, a Gabriel, a Ward, whoever that you deem NFL type quarterback? Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think there's the premium on veterans, and how you use them depends on their ability and probably even somewhat their age. I think Cousins has been fortunate. He's gotten a bag 3 different times now, 3 different teams. Well, 4 bags you count. He got 2 in one spot and got this other one. And has his clock run out? Is he more delegated to a backup role as opposed to being a perennial starter in this league anymore? Because he struggled here late, obviously, because he got benched. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think there's some intriguing names, veteran quarterbacks out there but I think fans tend to think, I want that new franchise quarterback now, that new guy. I don't want to recycle anybody, and I want that young guy. The other part of me is, I think you recycle a veteran who's been there, can win those games, has been in those moments, and knows how to win in this league. As a rookie, you're going to go through growing pains. You're going to have those ups and downs, those ebbs and flows. You might not have the same success that Stroud had last year or Daniels or Knicks had this year.
So, and there's also, to the point, there's going to be a quarterback surplus in the market this year, right? More than likely.
Yeah.
Because there are 4 teams that need a quarterback, regardless if they find it in the draft free agency. That's Titans, Giants, Raiders, Saints.
Yep.
Maybe need is Jets and Steelers, right? So if they cut Aaron Rodgers, they'll be in the quarterback market, but then there's a quarterback going into the free agency pool. Steelers, if they let Russ go, there's another one going in the free agency pool, right? Like, so there's someone else that's there. And then you got a need, but there's no real viable path in the draft except for Kirk Cousins or the draft, and that's the Browns, right? So if you're a team that signs Kirk Cousins, right? If the Browns sign Kirk Cousins, they only really can afford to pay him the minimal salary, still carry Deshaun Watson's contract and him on the team, and Kirk Cousins could be your starter, who has a prior relationship with Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota.
But then what happens with Jameis Winston?
Well, Jameis Winston's a free agent, so there's another guy in the free agency pool. But he's not a fit for the Titans, by the way.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
you're talking about, you got Justin Fields out there, potentially Sam Darnold. You got Russell Wilson that could maybe be out there. You got Aaron Rodgers that could maybe be out there. And there's a lot. Listen, I don't want most of these quarterbacks I just named. I'll be Justice Fields, I'm fine with. Sam Darnold's, I'm fine with. But there's so many quarterbacks and only so many places they can go. You're going to have a good option for flexibility. You have a good chance to bring in a whole new quarterback room that Brian Callahan has handpicked, that knows that maybe, hey, I saw what I saw out of Justin Fields and Art Smith's offense towards the end of Chicago. That guy goes through his progressions. And he does not throw to his first reads. So, I can make that work while I get Shadur Sanders, training up. Because I said to you, we talked about this last week, was Justin Fields would probably be a good quarterback to have because he's been through the gamut. Yeah. He's a good,
Sam Darnold potentially got
right. So you have that opportunity to do that and get these guys on in it, because none of these guys except for Sam Darnold are likely going to broach the 50 million mark. All these guys you're talking about are 10 million dudes to 20 million dudes to 30 million dudes. So that still gives you financial flexibility while also being able to draft a quarterback.
I think this offseason, interesting enough, quarterback is going to be one of the most intriguing moves. I think there's going to be I said Fields weeks ago. I like Fields. I think he's delegated to a backup role now because of the situation, but I think he's a starter in this next fleet.
Yeah.
He poses a problem. He has a lot of unique skill sets. Golly, man, it's going to be interesting how people reach it. And there's going to be a surprise out there, too, that you're thinking, oh, they let him go, and just because they think they can make a move to get up and maybe get a Sanders or something to that effect.
Well, the conversation around this has adjusted slightly because suddenly they have the number 2 pick with 1 game to go. Where just a few weeks ago, we were saying the Titans could lose out and have the number 6 pick.
Yeah.
Have the number 5 pick. Suddenly the Raiders have won a couple games. The Giants in a shocking performance against the Colts today. Yeah. And you've got the number 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
So understanding that this quarterback class is not as good as last year's. It's not thought to be very strong, not as bad as the Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder draft class. But those opportunities, unless you're the Browns for X amount of years or the Panthers in the last few years, don't come around that often to have a chance at the number 2 overall pick to take the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the class. So it'll be interesting to see how fans kind of adjust their mindset now to going from, well, we're not going to have a shot at any of those 2 guys anyway, to suddenly, no, draft a guy, bring in a bridge, right? Maybe can you walk that tightrope of having a stabilizing veteran quarterback and not having to throw your rookie QB into the fire? Because more often than not, the best quarterback situations in the NFL, I think, are born out of guys that get an opportunity to sit.
I'm with you.
Right? I mean,
more often than not.
There are exceptions, like Josh Allen. He had his stroke. Yeah, Stroud, Daniels, Nix is having a great year.
Yeah.
But then you look everywhere else, Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, all of these guys had a chance to sit. So if you can walk that tightrope this year, and suddenly maybe you have an opportunity to do that.
Right.
Understanding there's still another game to go and there's a lot that can happen.
And Sanders is a guy that would benefit from sitting on the bench for a little bit because one of his big issues, he processes pretty quick.
Yeah.
And quicker than Will Levis, but not quick enough probably right now. And maybe with a better offensive line, it will look better. And that's kind of what you have to kind of go through on the tape is, how much of it is on the offensive line, how much of it is on Sanders. But that would be a benefit because he could learn the speed of the game and everything behind a quarterback.
Right.
And to me, that's the most ideal situation for me is to have a veteran quarterback signed that's not Mason Rudolph, like a good one. Someone better than a Mason Rudolph, Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco kind of guy. And then you have draft Sanders and have him sit for the year. I think that would be the ideal scenario for me. Yeah. I just don't know how likely that is, but that would be the ideal scenario for me.
The last time the Titans were in this situation was Jameis Winston
and Marcus Mariota.
Marcus Mariota draft. And they were sitting there high, and you're getting one or 2 best quarterback prospects of the draft, depending on your version of who you wanted. And he came in, and he played. He started well. And then got a new head coach. And new coordinator. And just, from my perspective, I thought Mariota has never got to get settled past his rookie year.
Oh, sure. Offensive line issues,
yeah. And again, this is very reminiscent to that potentially where you have opportunity to take one of the first 2 quarterbacks in this draft, depending on how you rate them. Do you consider Sanders or Ward or whoever worthy of, I think, worst pick, they'll probably be, 3 or 4 at this point in game if they win next week?
Yeah, feels like if they were to win next week.
Yeah. So it's a great place to be, but also it sucks because you are at the mercy of what happens ahead of you in a lot of respects. And then we all know, you said it, Zach, somebody can look at that position like, you know what, I'm going to give up 3 picks and I'm going to get Sanders and I'm going to give it because I need him.
And listen, the Raiders are a team that you have to watch out for trading up with the Patriots.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There could be a total reset in Vegas between head coach, quarterback, everything.
Yeah.
This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play, visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Okay, I think we sparked some folks with that discussion. Phone lines are loading up. So we're going to get to the phone, 615-737-1045. If you want to talk about the Titans' 20-13 loss in Jacksonville, want to talk about the quarterback situation, draft position moving forward, we're with you for the next 2 hours. And your phone calls are next when we return on 104.5 The Zone. The Titans fall in Jacksonville 20-13, dropping to 3-13 on the year, and the Jags complete the season sweep of the Tennessee Titans. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. Dr. Kevin Dyson, Zach Lyons, I'm Lucas Panzica. Ton of phone calls to get to, 615-737-1045. A couple lines open. If you want to jump in, you can also watch live on 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Hop in the FNM Bank chat. Quickly, before we get to the phones, let's get to the Higginbotham right call of the game, and it is the play call to draw up Nick Vanette, the tight end, wide open for an 8-yard touchdown pass from Mason Rudolph that made it 13-10 Jags with 6:51 to go in the third quarter. It got the Titans within 3. The Jags did respond with a 16-play drive that took over 9 minutes off the clock to get it back to a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. Titans could not come all the way back, but drawing up a play action to get the tight end wide open into the end zone, that is the right call of the game. Higginbotham can be your business teammate by helping manage your risks, limit your liability, and put a plan of action in place and control your costs. Insurance plans for your company and your assets. It's all online at higginbotham.com. One other thing about this game, Tyjae Spears, a career high, 95 rush yards on 20 carries, was playing well. The Kellum science behind the stat, that is 19.49. Tyjae Spears, the fastest ball carrier for the Titans today at 19.49 miles per hour. From autism to arthritis, your body, your cells, your solution. Call 615-850-4415 for your consultation. Kellum Stem Cell. Spears did leave in the third quarter with a concussion. His season is over, Brian Callahan said in the post-game press conference. He did.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, he said Tyjae Spears and Jalen Duncan will not be available next week against the Texans.
Can we talk about Duncan real quick? How many times has he been put in a game and almost immediately injured? Like, it is insane. I feel so bad for him, but man, that's some crazy coincidence.
He just got back off IR. I mean, this was his first game back. I mean, when did the injury happen? Week 5, 6?
Something like that.
Early in the year.
It was immediately he got put in and whatever injury was, I believe a hamstring injury.
Yeah. So, Brian Callahan said that after the game. But Tyjae Spears quietly has played well in the last few weeks. Career high in rushing today with 95 yards. He hated it for Spears because he was at 100. And then the offensive line gets blown up, and a 5-yard loss is the play that he gets knocked out with as he goes back to be evaluated for concussion. So he did have a 100-yard game taken away, but a career high for Tyjae Spears nonetheless. All right, to the phone, 615-737-1045. Armand has been waiting patiently. He is in Houston. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Hey, man.
Hello?
Armand, we got you. What you have for us?
Okay, I'm going to tell you what the Texans going to do this week. They're going to play the first half and sit everybody the third and fourth quarter. I'm going to tell you how to fix the Titans. You don't need to do like the Texans did. They fired 4 head coaches, 3 general managers, traded Watson to Cleveland for 6 draft picks. This is what they need to do. They need to make some changes on the coaching staff, trade the second pick. Don't even draft a quarterback. Draft a quarterback in 26. Get as many picks as you can get. Go out and get Fields as the quarterback and Higgins as a wide receiver. Them the only things I do on the off season. And just deal with the draft picks. And go that route because you're 2 years away. 2 years. Because look at the Texans. They took 4.5 years and they're going to be 10-7. And they're not a juggernaut. They're in the weakest division right now in the AFC South. If you let Ram do what he needs to do, and the coach do what he needs to do in 2 years, you'll be back where you need to be. Because, first of all, you're going to get 3 comp picks. And I'm going to tell you, from Baltimore, the Chargers with Fuller, and a linebacker from the Texans, you're going to get them 3 comp picks. And Henry comp pick going to be either 3rd or 4th round pick.
All right,
and that's what you need to do.
Thanks for the call, Armand.
This quarterback now is horrible.
Thanks for the call.
I know. What I agree with in there is you can't make a lot of wholesale changes assuming it's going to fix all the problems. I think there's something to say with working through your issues to build something. And we're obviously in a rebuild mode, but do you want to start building something, tear that down, and start rebuilding it all over again? And that's where I have some hard time thinking that's where they're going to go, although it happens in professional sports time and time again. But to your point, Lucas, you said those teams that have done that over the last 10 years, and I can't remember, Zach shared a stat last week of all the teams, maybe it was Brent that shared the stat.
No, it was me.
Brent, yeah, of all those teams that there's like 10, 11 teams in there over the past decade that are kind of on the same mix, Browns and whoever. He has that stat, and it was just like, dang, you don't want to be in that group. You know, you want to get out that group. And how you get out that group, because the Lions were in that group for the longest, and now you got to build something. But do fans have the patience anymore, considering the length of time that it has been being in this valley? Do the fans have patience to wait another year or two to have something special 2-3 years from now?
Yeah, so it's 11 teams. So these are the least efficient teams from 2018 to 2024, including this year. And it's the Raiders, Jaguars, Giants, Panthers, Cardinals, Falcons, Commanders, Texans, Dolphins, Jets, Brown. So the Dolphins were really bad before they got Mike McDaniel. But they went through from 2018 to 2024, on average, 3.5 head coaches through that time frame, 2.4 GMs during that time frame, and 3.6 quarterbacks during that time frame. That's how much that the average they rotated through, in and out.
And do fans want that? No.
Right. And so, and I get it, because there's people in here that say, well, the team is more than a quarterback away. And you're right. There's no doubt about it. They're more than, but quarterback is the most important piece. You don't have a team until you have a quarterback.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much you build up around some of these guys and some of these players until you have a quarterback. And that could be free agency. That could be the draft. That could be trading for someone. But until you have a quarterback, you don't have a shot. Yeah. Like, you have to have a quarterback. Because your best shot was with Ryan Tannehill, because he was an extremely good quarterback from 2019 to parts of 2021.
Yeah.
And then he fell off the cliff after that Bengals playoff game, and you were stuck, and you don't have a quarterback, and you see how that's turned out for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. That's a remarkable stat when you hear it and you think about it.
I mean, the Broncos alone, the amount of quarterbacks, I wonder how much the Broncos were one of those 11 teams, correct? That you just listed. I wonder how much they inflate that average of quarterbacks, just the Denver Broncos alone.
On average, over 3 GMs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And over 3 quarterbacks.
Right.
Change does not constitute, constant change does not constitute success.
Yes,
in the NFL.
That's my point in it, is sometimes consistency is the best builder.
And listen, they're already wanting to fire Bobby Slowick in Houston.
The offensive coordinator.
Just got there.
Yeah. He just got there.
Well, their offense got shut out the last time the Houston Texans took the field on Christmas Day.
And their franchise is struggling. Their franchise quarterback struggling. So.
Yeah, that speaks to the state of the division, right? That the Texans are sitting there 9-7 on a 2-game slide. Everybody's upset down there. They've had the division clinched for weeks at this point. 615-737-1045. Rich in Smyrna is next. Hey, Rich.
Hey, Lucas. I just want to say to begin with that I appreciate the three of you on here after the game. Lucas, I love your practicality and as well as your knowledge. Man, Zach, your knowledge of stats is tremendous. And Doc, your experience in the game is invaluable.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Rich.
My question is this. Doc, you've been through a few professional quarterbacks, and you witnessed their inability or ability to fit into a scheme. My question about these two quarterbacks, Shadir and Ward, they're both very talented. But my question is, do they fit into what Callie's offense wants to do? Both of them appear to be more on the freelance side, kind of like Levis. And so I'm wondering, what's the probability of them fitting into the Titans and becoming less freelance and more predictable and game managers? And that's all I got to say. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks for the call, Rich, and for the kind words.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think Sanders is more prototypical than freelancer. He's more pocket than
the offensive line makes him look like a freelancer.
100%.
He's not really his own read kind of
so
guy.
I can see where Rich is coming from that, because like the offensive line forces
exactly
him out of the pocket to try to make plays, but that's not really his game. Cam Ward, 100% correct. You can't force that kid to play in structure.
Yeah.
That kid wants to play out of
And
structure.
that's what I think is going to maybe knock him down, depending on how his workouts are and things like that, is as far as being more NFL ready. Now, when I say NFL ready, closer to it, I think to that point, I think either one of them could benefit behind a veteran for a year or so. I think Sanders is more ready at this point. When I watch him play and his throwing motion, his accuracy, his ability to escape, he has great pocket presence. He has a sixth sense, and that's what you have to have back there. I think we mentioned earlier in the year where I thought Levis struggled with that sixth sense at times of when to escape and how to escape, knowing when the pressure's behind you and going forward, and vice versa. To me, and again, I just think Sanders is a little ahead of Ward from being pro-ready. Athletically, Ward, I think, is better. He's a better athlete. I think Sanders is, especially comparing it to his dad, he's nowhere close to athlete. Him, his dad, Hunter, nothing. He's just a good pocket quarterback. I think he's got to get a little bit bigger. I think he's going to have to work on his agility a little bit, get a little quicker.
It reminds me, so like Sanders does need to probably put on a little bit of weight. He's sneaky athletic.
Yeah.
I mean, he's nowhere near Cam Ward.
He is not a dual threat quarterback.
Right. Like Cam Ward, it just really reminds me so much of the Winston Marcus. It really does, because like Cam Ward is so much like Winston. Not really so much like Winston, but it reminds me of Cam Ward is the guy that everybody liked about Winston, like the attitude, the ability to throw, have the better arm. He had the stronger arm. But Mariota was the more accurate quarterback, right? To safer with the ball. And that's kind of what Sanders is. Yeah, like Winston was willing to put the ball in harm's way, and more often than not in college it worked out. But for Shedeur, he's more secure with the ball, and he doesn't have that. He has that kind of like borderline NFL arm, that Joe Burrow, Marcus kind of arm, where it's not like the best arm, but it's good enough to make every throw down the field. And what's good about Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, is his ability to play with timing and his ability to layer in the throws in the short and intermediate area. And that's where Cam Ward really has to grow, in my opinion. You're really drafting high floor versus high ceiling. I mean, that's really what you're drafting. That's there's always those two quarterbacks in every class where you're kind of like, which one is going to pan out? It's almost a coin toss, because like Josh Allen and, Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, right? Like, I mean, it's just kind of how those situations go. But for the one that fits this particular system and what this quarterback coach or this offensive coordinator / head coach, offensive coach, that's what I'm trying to think of, has told us he wants, it's Shedeur all day long. I mean, Shedeur is the guy that fits out. Those two quarterbacks fits the most. There are other quarterbacks that are available later in the draft that could probably, if you choose to build from a different perspective and not draft a quarterback in the first round, there are quarterbacks in this draft that you take a chance on that still fit what you want, but probably don't have the ceiling as high as Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
We got to see both of these quarterbacks on Saturday, a rarity nowadays when the teams are not involved in the college football playoff. And if you're just joining us, there's going to be a lot of discussion about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders moving forward, because the Titans, as it currently stands, hold the number 2 pick in the NFL draft after the Giants won today. Drew Lock with 5 total touchdowns, 45-33 the final over the Colts, eliminating the Colts and also moving the Giants out of the top 2, and the Titans move up to the number 2 spot in the draft with a 20-13 loss to Jacksonville. That's just in case you're chiming in. Yesterday, Cam Ward played in the first half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl and starred. He was 12 of 19, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns. making throws at all kinds of crazy angles. Fun game, shootout. But he made way for the backup, Emory Williams, and he sat out in the second half. A discussion for another day, how much we're going to start to see that. Guys kind of halfway opting out, showing a little something, and then sitting out.
If you get that insurance policy, you might see guys play more.
And that's exactly what Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter did for Colorado. It was a different story for them as Miami lost in a shootout. Game went down to the wire, 42-41 to Iowa State.
Don't have a win against any ranked team still.
Miami this season. Yeah. Wow. Good point. That's incredible. They were
they almost went to the playoffs.
And a historic season for Iowa State, so a hat tip to them. 11 games, 11 wins for the first time in program history. Different story for Colorado yesterday. They were routed by BYU. The final was 36-14. Game was not that close. Shedeur Sanders played the whole game in the Alamo Bowl, 16-23, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Travis Hunter had his 100 yards and a touchdown, but Sanders had some of his struggles, a couple of interceptions yesterday. But to that point, it does feel like Cam Ward, although maybe the more, I think if you turn the tape on, the Ward stuff's going to pop a lot more. But he probably carries a lot of that improvisational stuff and turnover-laden sort of tendencies that the Titans tried so hard to get out of Will Levis. So I think I'm with you that Sanders probably fits that mold a little bit better.
Yeah, like the Giants, I kind of, from everything I've heard, Cam Ward is going to kill the interview cycle. Everything, probably combine.
Oh, yeah, people love the guy.
Combine, interviews, background checks, when you're talking to other players and coaches. Like, this guy's going to pass with flying colors. So I kind of felt like if Brian Daboll was there and the Giants were picking number 1, I was like, man, I really think the Giants are going to go Cam Ward. I mean, that guy could be his Josh Allen, right? But then you're thinking, well, he didn't really have a good time with Daniel Jones, but Cam Ward is much better than Daniel Jones coming out. So you kind of go through this whole the big issue with Cam Ward is always going to be interceptions and fumbles, and the way that he can put you into position to win, but take you right out of it just like that, like a drop of a hat. And I have no issue with how he handled the Pop-Tart game or whatever, because I know people are going to talk about that and everything. But I look at it and I go, man, I'll turn to my wife. We're watching it at the bar and I go, I understand it's not a big deal probably to the NFL, but all those other players on the Miami team, how are they really feeling knowing, I'm sure they understand it, but how do you really feel about, okay, Cam Ward probably could have won this game and we could have had a bowl game and a win against a ranked team, and then he just kind of set out the half. I just always wonder how the players view it, because it's interesting to me how they now view this whole NIL draft class kind of deal. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to what he put on tape. But what he put on tape yesterday was awesome. I mean, he was stepping up into the pocket and making off-platform throws in the pocket. Yeah. Some of that stuff is unnecessary, though. Mm-hmm. He didn't, in one of the highlight throws, he could just stayed in the pocket and made the same throw, but he always has to do something a little bit extra. Yeah. And that's the problem with Cam. It's not just those things that he does extra in terms of, in terms of the turnovers, is what he does in terms of the good plays. Can you break those bad habits? Because in the NFL, those plays are going to end up a lot different.
I'll compare him a little bit to Justin Fields coming out, and Justin Fields being a very gifted athlete, surrounded by athletes, based on great throws, winning quarterback in college football, but came to a franchise he expected to be the savior. And it didn't work out for him, obviously. I think if he came in a situation like he is right now, where he could have benefited from watching the game, slowing himself down a little bit and coming in a reserve role and making plays as he did. I mean, he started the season off, but you get what I'm saying. He had an opportunity to sit with a veteran. I think he would have benefited had he done that in Chicago, but he came in expected to be the savior. And he wasn't quite there yet. I think Cam kind of falls in that mode more so than Sanders for me. I think he's a guy that I think he can benefit sitting on the sideline with headset on, processing the game. Here's the play, here's the coverage, here's the front. What should I be thinking, et cetera, getting some time in garbage time, in injury time, and things of that nature, just getting that experience. But benefiting from having an established veteran who can kind of walk him through some things, a la Jordan Love, even Pat Mahomes. They did that with my man Alex Smith. So and look at him now. He's widely considered top 2 or 3 quarterbacks of all time. And I'm putting him 2 or 3 because I'm still a fan of Peyton and Tom Brady. So and again, I wasn't in the Joe Montana era and some of these other quarterbacks. So, but I think it's going to be interesting before we get to the draft. Zach has mentioned it. There are several veterans that to me are in a rebuild. Because I don't think there's going to be just one player, let alone just one quarterback that's all of a sudden now we're going to be 12-4 or 12-5 going to the playoffs, winning the division. I think you're a few players away, but I'll be interested to see that person that's kind of that if they choose to go this route, that gap guy, that gap quarterback, and I'm gonna use his name. And I don't necessarily think this is the guy, but a Kirk Cousins type guy who's just a solid guy who's going to mentor and groom a young guy behind him because there's no ego in it. He just knows I'm here to mentor this young guy. Yeah, and that's the kind of mentality you want from that veteran, whoever it is, if that's the route they go.
And guess what? It's not going to be an easy road next year. The 2025 opponents are currently, starting to look up, be locked in. You're going to be playing Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, then Kansas City, Chargers, Rams, Seattle, then one of Jets and Patriots, and one of the Panthers and Saints, and then Arizona.
Well, it'll be Patriots because they'll be last in the AFC East.
Unless something, I guess, crazy happens.
Yeah, and then Panthers because they'll be last in the NFC South. So you will have a last place schedule.
Right. So, but then you got Arizona, Denver, Vegas, San Francisco, and Cleveland on top of that.
Yes.
I mean, that's still a pretty stout, list. It's about as bad as what you had this year for a 4th place schedule, and then you're going to get another bad 4th place schedule. Some good defenses on that rotation too. So again, my ideal situation is draft Sanders, but have a bridge quarterback that could be that quarterback to start out for 2025 and maybe play the whole year while Sanders sits and learns and gets adjusted to the speed of the NFL.
This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. 615-737-1045. Titans fall in Jacksonville today, 20-13 to drop to 3-13 on the year. We're with you until 6:30, and we go right back to the phones when we come back on 104.5 The Zone. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play? Visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Titans fall in Jacksonville 20-13 with one game to go in the regular season. The Titans are 3-13. And due to the Giants' win over the Colts at MetLife Stadium, the Titans currently hold the number 2 pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. I say that because I know that's what a lot of you guys want to talk about, so we go to the phone, 615-737-1045. John in Florida is up next. Hey, John.
Hey, everyone. I appreciate all of you. I'm a lifelong Titans fan, and I'm old enough to remember the days and the reports when we heard that Bud Adams wanted Vince Young and over Jeff Fisher. I say all that to say that now I'm hoping that Sanders is the GM's choice and the head coach's choice and Andy Adams' choice. But what Sanders does is he puts fans in the seats. He will bring a media that will talk about the Tennessee Titans in a way we haven't been talked about, even when we were winning under Vrabel. And I'm not saying he's the Andrew Luck and the Caleb Williams, projection, of a quarterback, but that's what he brings. He brings box office. And if we're losing 2 years and 3 years later with him, we're having a different conversation. But I just wanted to make that my point. Hopefully we get the number 1 pick because, if the Patriots have the number 1 pick, they may trade out of it. And then somebody who takes the number 1 pick may take him because of that. But anyway, that's all. Have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the call, John.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, he made a good point.
Yeah.
Let's go to Richard up next in Winchester. Hey, Richard.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to cut right to the chase. Cut right to it. Okay. Based on, and you guys have alluded to it, based on the fact that you don't get a second chance maybe in life at a first or second pick, you have to take a quarterback. You have to, and I think they will. If they're 1 or 2 next April when the draft is, or May, they're going to take one of those 2 quarterbacks. And based on everything I've heard, even from this show, Shedeur Sanders is like hand in glove for what Callahan wants. As far as his scheme and everything, you can't be messing around with this. He had Pat Schumer, who's an NFL quarterback and a coordinator, as his coordinator in Colorado. So everybody got growing pains, and you have to take a quarterback. You can't wait on 26 or 27. You have to take a quarterback, and everything else will fall in place. You just have to take a quarterback, especially with a guy who is a perfect fit for what you want to do.
Thanks for the call, Richard.
I mean, everybody has to understand, whether you're a Shedeur guy, a Cam Ward guy, or a free agent guy, whatever, they got to find a quarterback because their job's on the line. Like next year, it's all about their jobs, and what the moves that they are going to be making aren't necessarily going to be with the long-term health of the franchise in mind, unless they have something written in a contract somewhere, an unbreakable bond that they can't be fired after next year. It's going to be with success in 2025 mostly in mind. So they're going to be, whatever quarterback path they choose is what their 2025 or 2025 and beyond career status is tied to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing about it, Callahan will have a better sense of himself as a leader, a play caller, and needs and wants, right? I think this year, as cruel as the lesson was a lot of learning for him. And I think he will go in this offseason, him being able to probably be more vocal, as a person who's been here now, saying this is what I need. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's my top quarterbacks in free agency. Here's my number 1. And if that's not if you don't want to go that route, this is the guy I want from the rookie pool. And really, I don't see, or he may say, I don't see nobody in the rookie pool that's worth it to me. So I really need this guy. Can we get him? Spend XYZ amount of dollars for it. And I think that's going to be interesting to see the dynamic between him and Rand this offseason, whereas Rand kind of got to run the show completely because Callahan, his first stint as a head coach, came here as the hire of Rand and things of that nature were just kind of just, I don't want to say just happy to have a job, but, you know, get what I'm saying? Like he was, man, this is my first opportunity. I'm just kind of see how this show goes. I'm giving my input, but at the end of the day, it's his decision.
Yeah, he was presented a quarterback.
Yeah.
This is your quarterback. His name is Will Levis. Right.
So I'll be interested to see what that dynamic looks like this offseason between him and Rand and kind of where he goes. I think Zach has mentioned it several times today, especially of the type of guy that Callahan has said he looks for. And if we make the assumption of different people of a Carr or a Burrow, is that guy on this roster presently?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Mason Rudolph's your closest example of what he wants, but still not what he wants.
Right. He's a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
No, that's a fascinating question, KD, just in terms of, that being such a stark difference this offseason compared to last offseason. Yeah. I mean, he was getting a head coaching opportunity with a quarterback presented to him. It was not, well, no, come in here and, what do you think? Should we ride with this guy? No, the chips were in on Levis for 2024, regardless of who they hired. Yes. So he came in and he said all the things that, Will Levis is a big reason why I took this job. So, everything that you expect someone to say in that position. But now it stands to reason that he will have a say in who the next quarterback is of the Titans. Yeah. And to the caller's point, to Richard and Winchester's point, how often do you see, let's say the Titans do end up with the top 2 pick, and again, they hold that currently, still a whole other week of games. Let's say they end up with the top 2 pick. How often do you see a team with the number 1 or number 2 pick that has a desperate need at quarterback not take a quarterback with the number 1 or number 2 pick, right? And very extreme scenarios.
And I want to say something. Just because they draft or they sign a quarterback in free agency that maybe is a named quarterback does not preclude them from drafting a quarterback. Yeah. What that does is open up their options and be more open to listening to trade back offers, because then they're going to be like, well, we have Derek Carr. We know for an example. Yeah, I don't want the chat to go crazy. Zach wants Derek Carr.
Or a Sam Darnold who's dropping dimes right now as the Vikings are beating the Packers.
You get a guy like that, and you're like, okay, well, what's better for the team? Is it better to get a first, stay in the first round, trade back just a few spots, get Abdul Carter, and then have a first for next year and all these other players that are coming with it? Like, what if the Raiders called you up? Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, we're currently in the 6th spot of the draft. Yeah. Max Crosby doesn't want to be around for a rebuild with us anymore. He wants out. We'll give you Max Crosby, this year's first, next year's first. And this team currently has, let's say, Derek Carr, Justin Fields, whoever. You'd be crazy not to take that.
Yeah.
And those are real possibilities in the NFL that can happen at a drop of a hat. And the best way to do it is to make sure that free agency supplements the draft. Yeah. Your draft supplements your roster, but free agency needs to supplement the draft in the chance that you shouldn't have wide open, obvious holes on your roster when you head into the draft. Yeah. And you need to have that flexibility. So like last year, we all knew they needed an offensive tackle. Everybody in America knew they needed an offensive tackle because they didn't address their tackle positions. Yeah. You don't need that to also happen with the quarterback position, because you want to have that flexibility just in case someone gets, high off their rocker and wants to offer you Max Crosby and a couple of firsts.
That would be an interesting dynamic.
Titans fall in Jacksonville 20-13. We're talking draft position, talking quarterbacks, the direction the franchise is headed this coming offseason with only 1 game to play against the Houston Texans. Quickly, we mentioned Tyjae Spears, a career-high 95 rush yards, left the game with concussion. Brian Callahan said in the post-game presser he will be out for the regular season finale against Houston. Mason Rudolph, 19-31, 193 yards, a touchdown, and an interception today. Calvin Ridley, the lead receiver against his former team, 5 catches for 84 yards as he continues to close in on being the 8th player in the Titans era to go over 1,000 yards receiving. He is 59 yards away from 1,000 going into the regular season finale. So your reaction on the game, on the draft class, on everything, 615-737-1045. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. More of your calls next on 1045 The Zone. Titans fall 20-13 at Everbank Stadium to the Jacksonville Jaguars, dropping the Titans to 3-13 on the year. Jacksonville 4-12 heading into the final week of the regular season. Welcome back. This is Titans Talkback alongside Zach Lyons, Titans legend Dr. Kevin Dyson. I am Lucas Panzica. We're with you until 6:30, walking you right up to pregame coverage of Westwood 1 on Sunday Night Football. Falcons Commanders. Fun game tonight. High stakes. Commanders no longer have a shot at the NFC East, but very much obviously in the playoff discussion. And the Falcons trying to stay at the top of the NFC South after the Bucs won in blowout fashion over the Panthers earlier today. Atlanta needs a win to stay at the top of the division heading into Week 18. Quickly, before we get back to the phone, 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Some key results around the noon and late afternoon slate in Week 17. As we mentioned, Titans fall to the Jags. The Giants knock off the Colts 45-33. Drew Lock goes crazy. The Colts are eliminated from playoff contention. The Eagles officially are NFC East champs, 41-7 against the Cowboys, but no Jalen Hurts in this game in concussion protocol. Kenny Pickett gets the start, gets knocked out with the rib injury, so Tanner McKee, the third stringer, has to finish it out. Didn't matter. Eagles blow out the Cowboys. Saquon Barkley, 167 yards, guys, and he is officially the first Philadelphia Eagles running back to run for 2,000 yards, and he is well within striking distance of that Eric Dickerson record next week.
Yeah, I put asterisk on it just because of the extra game.
Hey, but he still reached 2,000 yards in 16 weeks.
I'm good with that.
But I'm with you, Dice. I'm with you. Yeah.
The question becomes, does he play next week? Because I know that, first off, in a meaningless game, everything's locked up for the Eagles. In a meaningless game, you don't want to risk your star player getting hurt, and then because you got the playoffs and everything ahead of you. But he could break the all-time record.
It's been there for 40 years.
Been there for 40 years against his old team.
It's crazy.
That is, it's really the worst-case scenario, because if it's like the Commanders or the Cowboys in Week 17 or Week 18, you're probably thinking, oh, no, it's fun. It's the Giants. It's a team that just ditched you publicly on Hard Knocks as well.
And I wouldn't go as far as to say meaningless, because technically the 1 seed is mathematically available.
Oh, is it? Well, but if Detroit wins, they lock it up, right?
No, because Minnesota is crushing Green Bay right now. So if Minnesota's up 20-3 over the Packers in the third quarter, if Minnesota were to lose, if the Packers come back and win this game at US Bank Stadium, and the Lions win tomorrow, Lions lock up the division and the 1 seed. But if the Vikings hang on here, even if Detroit wins tomorrow, the 1 seed is not official going into next week.
I'll say this, and Zach asked me that question before the show, and I said, man, that's tough. But then I start thinking about something. There is something to say from a player's perspective, a badge of honor to be a part of history. And especially on stuff like that, offensive line and play caller, there is something to say, man, let's go get it. Now, if it's one of those games where you're just getting beat up to heck and you got like 11 carries.
Darnold just got picked off while we were commending them.
You got 11 carries for 22 yards going into the halftime. You're like, it's not worth it. We'll just sit you down. But if you start off hot, you know, talking about 11 carries, 76 yards in the first half, like, let's go get it. You know what I mean? I think there's something to say about it, because you talk to anybody, whether it be CJ or Derrick Henry or Jamal or any of these, or Adrian, any of these other 2,000 rushes in the past 20 years, I guarantee you ask the players that were a part of that, there's a sense of pride that comes with it.
Oh, sure. We hear from Ben Jones, the guys on that Titans offensive line that played in front of Derek all the time about how cognizant they were of that in the regular season finale in Houston, of this is what we need to get Derek the 2,000 yards.
I think they go for it. I think they see how the game transpires. And again, as you mentioned, they're still in the hunt for the number 1 seed overall. So if that's enough in there, you got to. But on the flip side of that, if I'm the Giants, I'll be damned if he gets it on us. You know?
Hey, Drew Lock plays like he did today. I don't know if anybody can beat the New York Giants. Oh, that was so out of nowhere. That's Dr. Kevin Dyson, who knows a little something about making history for an NFL franchise. Quickly, the other game going on, Dolphins leading the Browns 13-3. Miami fighting for their playoff lives. No Tua today. Tyler Huntley starts as Tua deals with a hip injury, and Buffalo destroyed the New York Jets 40-14. The Bills have locked in the 2 seed in the AFC as the Chiefs locked in the 1 seed on Christmas Day with a blowout win over the Steelers. Back to the phones. Mark in the Borough is next. Hey, Mark.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening,
man.
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah, so man, this is good for Callahan. He's getting lucky right now coming in to a team who has another number 1 pick or a top 10 pick. I think it's and I call it luck. I mean, I wouldn't want this type of luck. I want a great team. But as far as with the Titans potentially just locking in that number 1 pick, should the team like prioritize drafting a franchise quarterback, given the struggles at the position, or would it be wise to build from the trenches and take like the best available defensive end right now, or right tackle? Building from the trenches and solidify the roster, because I think drafting a quarterback is a glaring need right now, of course, but I always was taught don't draft of need, draft the best available player. And if you absolutely need a quarterback, but you need to build from the trenches as well. So I'm kind of torn right now because, man, I will move JC back to the right side and if need be, and draft the best available left if he was better over the right, if that makes sense. So yeah. I'm kind of torn, y'all.
Thanks for the call, Mark.
It's a few things. Where does Callahan and this organization put a premium on the top prospects in this draft? Do they believe they're worthy of a top 5 pick? Because that's going to speak volumes. I think we can say that. All the analysts and quote-unquote experts can make their assumptions, but what does the franchise believe, right? That's number one. Number two, I think it comes down to free agency and what's potential out there, not just at quarterback, at offensive line, and maybe even defensive end. To your point, if you get a guy like Crosby from the Raiders, that's an interesting prospect. Then you got somebody that's double-digit sacks. You almost know that's chalk it up. Now you can spend money in other places and do some different things. So I think, I just don't know. I mean, we can make assumptions and guess where Callahan's mind is on certain things and what he wants from a quarterback. But does he see that in these guys? I think we see similarities to even what he's verbalized. But does he, when he watch film and they scrutinize every little play and everything, does he see it as far as Sanders is concerned, or Ward, if we're talking about those being the top 2 prospects going into the 25 draft?
And not everything has to be perfect to draft a quarterback. I mean, we've seen people draft quarterbacks and they turn out to be good and they elevate maybe the team around them and everything. I'm with what was his name? That just
Mark.
I'm with Mark where he said he struggles with, drafting for need versus drafting for best player available. And that is an internal struggle I have right now, because you should never draft for need. Now, signing a quarterback helps alleviate some of that, because then you're drafting really, if you're drafting Sanders that high, then you truly believe he's the best player available. I don't know if the board will fall that way, because you got Travis Hunter, you have Abdul Carter. I think both those players are objectively better than either of the quarterbacks. I think they're the top 2 the players on this team. So then that would allow you, if you were to sign a free agent quarterback that you think highly of, to build the way that he wants to build. Here's your not way too early draft take that you guys could just take to the bank. There isn't a left tackle worthy of the top 5 picks. Yeah. There isn't a left tackle worthy of the top 10 picks. You have tackles with major physical limitations currently in the college football ranks that are projected to go in the top 10 that may get kicked into the guards. They may be good for right tackle. Yeah. But you need playmakers and game changers. That's what you need. Playmakers and game wreckers is what I'm going with. And Shedeur can be a playmaker for your team. He can change games for your team. The tackles aren't going to do that. The value for tackle is in the second round. We just need to wash away this Kelvin Banks, because you know who's Kelvin Banks' biggest comp is right now? Peter Skoronski, because he's short, tiny, and he lacks a lot of power to play at the tackle position at the next levels. Everybody's concerns right now. And what you'll see as the year goes on, draft analysts putting tackle/guard or OL instead of just OT because they don't know where he's going to slot in. And that's not what you want to spend a top 10 pick on.
Yeah. Well, so I'll go back to the conversation we had several weeks ago where there's widely considered 5-6 guys that are in that top 5 range, right? Rankings. Everybody else is kind of slotted in there depending on who, but there's 5 or 6 guys that are kind of rated super high right now. 2 quarterbacks, and you mentioned two or three different guys, I should say. So with that being said, if you're the Titans and you end up 4th, at that point, you do get the draft best available of those 5, or take that pick to leverage it and build on picks for this draft and beyond, right? If you're at 1 or 2, I think you have to go with quarterback. If you believe that guy,
you have to believe. You can't sit on the fence about it, guys. That's my big thing. Like, the Chiefs, the Bills, they traded up in the first round when they didn't necessarily need quarterbacks at the time. They traded up because they believed that those guys were their dudes.
Yeah, there was some conviction there.
You got to have conviction. If you don't have conviction, don't draft a quarterback.
Then be where you're at.
You're just going to have to, take your medicine, I guess. But this idea, see, here's the thing also, bad thing about this draft is that after it's really Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Johnson, and Mason Graham. Those are your blue chippers, and probably in any other draft, they're the only ones with first-round grades. Like, this is a low first-round. You're going to have players in the top 10 on big boards, but those players aren't necessarily top-tier talents.
But then to that point, let me say this. Let me ask you this. If you're sitting there, you need a tackle, you need a quarterback, right? I think everybody's on the assumption. And Travis Hunter is sitting there at 3 or 4. Do you not take him?
Here's the thing about taking Travis Hunter for this particular team is that he doesn't have the impact that Abdul Carter would, because this team's got L'Jarius Sneed, Cheeto, Roger McCreary, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., and Gerald Baker. Is Travis Hunter particularly probably better than most of them? Probably, but if you're looking for impact players, you can have the best coverage unit possible. If you don't have a pass rush, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They could, if a quarterback has 7 or 8 seconds, like we've seen quarterbacks regularly do, then coverage can only last you so long. So, like, I'm talking like impact for this team. Yes, Travis Hunter is the best player available, and if they drafted him, I wouldn't be surprised if he's there. But if you think the gap is not that far, and I don't think the gap between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter is that far, personally.
Yeah.
I'm going Abdul Carter because he gives you the impact on this team you desperately need.
I'd be interested to see. I make the assumption that Travis Hunter would be corner/athlete.
Yeah, you may get like 10 to 15 offensive plays out of it.
We could be similar to what Deion did.
Yeah.
From the perspective of a former first-round draft pick, a wide receiver, KD, where do you see that discussion in terms of where he'll play in the NFL?
I'm interested in him in the sense that I view him more like the Deion mold, the highly athletic guy who could be 1,000-yard receiver, but he doesn't have quote-unquote wide receiver / this is what I do skills, right? But he can play receiver. So I don't want people to think I'm tearing the kid up, because I think he could be 1,000-yard receiver in the National Football League. I just think he has to decide, where am I going to invest my time in his offseason? You can't go 50-50 trying to get ready for the draft. Now, they're going to ask you to run some routes and do some different things if you're saying I'm coming in as a corner, just to see, because you're an athlete, because people get excited about if you got a playmaker putting the ball in his hand, they're going to put the ball in his hand.
Yeah.
They tried that with Adoree and things of that nature, right? You're a playmaker. They're going to try it. I just think uniquely, I think he has an instinct and a skill set that he can be and athleticism in this pass-happy NFL to be very successful at corner in that football league. Now, he's a little slender, and part of that, he plays both ways. He's got to get a little solid shoulders, and Trapp's got a little bit more solid. He's a little slender.
He's got good acceleration. I mean, like you saw him on that touchdown last night. I don't even think he got the touchdown because I think
he scored last. It was a 43-yard touchdown.
Well, it may not be the play I'm thinking of, but I mean, you saw the acceleration.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. Like I think if he came out and said, I'm going in this as a receiver, he's going to have to work at receiver.
Yeah.
And then let's go do some DB drills. But my personal take is I think he goes the opposite way because I think that's more natural fit for him as a corner. But, only time will tell. He may say, I'm a receiver. I want to go catch the ball. We'll see. I mean, he had 90 catches.
Well, it felt like Brian Thomas Jr. had 90 catches today against the Titans, the Jags rookie. Impressive. He only had 7.
Maybe they do need Travis Hunter now that you say it.
He caught a couple of those over Jarvis Brownlee Jr., 91 yards and a touchdown on 7 catches.
Maybe I need to quit downplaying the cornerback room being good.
Well, and Snead and him, that's not a bad look.
Sure.
But I'm just saying.
Corner will not be a big need for the Titans next year with the amount of guys under contract. But all credit to Jarvis Brownlee Jr. for the way he's played as a rookie in a tough spot, thrown into starting roles that weren't anticipated. But as the Vikings are just piling it on now, 26-10 against the Packers. You did see today, though, the difference between first round and fourth round, right? Because Brownlee had some phenomenal coverage on 2 of those nice, first of all, great throws by Mac Jones, drops in the bucket. But Brownlee's all over him. I mean, I don't think Brownlee could be any physically closer to Brian Thomas Jr., but just the length, the athleticism for Brian Thomas Jr. to make those catches. He's a good player, man.
My draft take last year is that Brian Thomas would be just as good or as better than Malik Neighbors and be better than Marvin Harrison Jr. Just want to say it's a little early, but it's looking pretty good.
They're all pretty good. I mean, Malik Neighbors went a little crazy today, too. He's over 1,000 yards as a rookie as well.
When you start really breaking down last year's draft class,
100 catches.
Lots of hits in the first round.
No doubt.
That will not be the case this year. Do not let last year's draft class influence how this draft class will be.
Titans Talkback is presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. We go to Tristan and Brentwood up next. Hey, Tristan.
Thank you for taking my call. Hey, okay, since we have the number 2, we could get the number 1 as New England wins next week and we lose next week, which is a possibility, then trade down because Shedeur Sanders, I've seen him play against Nebraska this week and a couple other weeks against Baylor. He's not that great. Cam Ward is not that great. Travis Hunter, I would say he's a great athlete, but I want Colston Loveland, because do we have a number 1 tight end? We have number 2 tight ends, like a number 1 that's Colston Loveland. He can block, he can catch, and then we get Kyle McCord, who's from Syracuse, and see how that pans out in the 3rd or 4th round. And we get Cam Scatterby. We get the guy from Minnesota, arm so 6'6", 320 pounds, left tackle or right tackle, and then that's good.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Tristan.
I'm out on tight ends in the first round. Yeah. And Tyler Warren, if you're picking 28th, I'll throw a 28th pick at Tyler Warren.
Draft. Brock Bowers last year.
Yeah, now that's a little bit different. There is no Brock Bowers in this draft.
Speaking of impressive rookies, Brock Bowers today broke the rookie record for receiving yards by a tight end, held by Mike Ditka. So you got to go a ways back for that one.
The 60s.
Well over 1,000 yards for Brock Bowers.
Man, the Brock Bowers discourse was so overblown on Titans Twitter. People were like, "Oh, you don't draft tight end. Here's why. Look at Kyle Pitts." Brock Bowers was generational. Yeah. Yes. Brock Bowers was considered a generational tight end when he was still playing in the same season in the same conference as Kyle Pitts. Right. Kyle Pitts was the most overblown, quote-unquote, generational tight end prospect I've ever seen.
Yeah. He was athletic, and he gave you that vibe that he can be something special.
Generational more in the way that Anthony Richardson was, right? That we just hadn't seen, fire-breathing dragon specimen like that at the position.
You put him in the right system. You put him in KC, we'll be having a conversation.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. The quarterback has been an issue for him.
It's been an issue. But I will say this, and I said, with the Titans pick last year, that was a guy. I thought we needed playmakers.
Playmakers.
And that was one. He's a matchup problem. Do you put a corner on him? Safety? Linebacker?
Yep.
And
Move him around?
Move him around, what do you do?
We watched Brock Bowers as an 18-year-old carry the entire Georgia receiving corps to a national championship. So, yeah, you won't get any arguments from me there. And he's doing exactly that in Vegas. 615-737-1045. We will continue to take your calls, taking you until 6:30 before Westwood One takes over for Sunday Night Football coverage of Falcons and Commanders. This is Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone. Titans Talkback is presented by Lee Company. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play? Visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. With you until 6:30, reacting to the Titans' 20-13 loss at the Jacksonville Jaguars, alongside Titans legend Dr. Kevin Dyson and Zach Lyons, who you can hear from 1 to 3 on Cover 2 every weekday here on The Zone. I'm Lucas Panzica, and we go right back to the phone. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. 737-1045. You also can chime in on the FNM Bank chat, 1045 The Zone TV, where we are streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Mike in Old Hickory is up next. Hey, Mike.
How you doing?
Great.
How you doing, man?
Here I come again with my opinion. It's always the offensive line. That's the only way we're going to build a team. But right now we're not doing it. We're talking about Sanders, bringing him to Nashville. His father's never going to let him come here. Why do you want to come to a small market team, advertising-wise, and they get killed behind the worst offensive line in football? So what we need to do is spend our drafts, spend our number one, and we may get number one. We've got number two, and start building the offensive line. Look at all the great teams in the past. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Dallas Cowboys, the New England Patriots. What did they have? A massive, powerful offensive line, protecting the quarterback and advancing the running game.
Thanks for the call, Mike.
I can't argue with his analysis on the importance of offensive line in the National Football League or any level of football. I'm not going to argue that fact. What I would argue is the value of that pick. If you're in a top five, is there somebody worth that? Right. Is there a Joe Thomas, a perennial Pro Bowl, all-pro left tackle? Is there a guy like that? Tony Baselli, Jonathan Ogden. I'm talking about guys that were top 10, top 15 picks that when they put in day one, they were perennial Pro Bowlers. Is there that guy? And I don't. You know better than I, Zach. I haven't seen it.
Not in this. I mean, there's guys that could turn into that are probably like Josh Simmons, who's coming off a major injury, so you don't know when he's going to be fully healthy, ready, back into playing shape. But the left tackle from Ohio State, he's a guy, but he's not a top 10 pick. But he's a guy that could be available maybe in the second round. There's Connerly from Oregon, and there's the kid from Mizzou who I still do not know how to pronounce his last name. There's also the kid from Minnesota. Don't know how to say his last name, but they both start with M. Then there's M'Bow from Purdue. There's Lunt from UConn. But these are all guys you can have in the second round that some of them are familiar with the right tackle position. You don't have to switch them. Excuse me, there's some that you may have to switch from left tackle to right tackle, or maybe you put them in at left tackle and all this stuff. You know, there are other guys to build. And I agree with this premise. Like, yes, this team needs an offensive line. But there's two things I'll disagree with is that this is the worst offensive line in the NFL. It's currently not. By any of the metrics, it's like New England, the Giants. It's near the worst. But mainly these last few weeks, though, it's been one of the best.
I was going to say this has been masked, and rightfully so, right, by all the losing and a lot of the bad. But quietly, has the offensive line steadily improved throughout the course of the season under Bill Callahan?
I mean, technically they have. Yeah. And let me say something. The other part of this quarterback discussion / offensive line discussion is that with Will Levis, 31% of his pressures turn into sacks. With Mason Rudolph, up until today, not count today, it's been 10.1. Same offensive line, quarterback can make up and make your offensive line look good. Tom Brady made his offensive line look a lot better and play out of their mind more than what their talent level suggested. Mm-hmm. So quarterbacks are able to help the offensive line. Look at Derek Carr. Everybody thinks that their offensive line is some magnificent thing. And listen, they're not terrible or anything. But he's only got an 8.5% pressure to sack ratio. So he's getting the ball out quicker and not taking a lot of sacks or doing throwaways and stuff like that. So we have to understand, again, it all comes back to quarterback. Yeah. It really does. And listen, you need to have a good situation for any quarterback to walk into, but there still is free agency and there still is the rest of the draft. Today's offensive line is not the offensive line you'll see in 2025.
Yep.
Well,
I agree.
Titans, let me pull it up here, allowed 3 sacks today, did allow 3 sacks, and that does give us a chance to check in on the Kroger sacks for cash. Titans allowed 3 sacks, but forced 2. Titans had 2 sacks defensively, courtesy of Jerome Baker and James Lynch today. So Kroger's donation to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee now stands at $3,800, courtesy of those 2 sacks. Every time the Titans sack the opposing team's quarterback, Kroger donates $100 to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee. From Kroger, through its Zero Hunger, Zero Waste plan, Kroger is committed to ending hunger in our communities. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Chris in Lewisburg is next. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys. I just wanted to wish everybody a Happy New Year.
Same to you.
To start off, I've been a Titans fan from the beginning, and this is one of the worst, if not the worst seasons I've ever witnessed. I feel good about going forward with Rand Carthon. I think if you looked at his draft and his free agencies, he's done a good job at bringing talent in here, and he's had limited picks. Like his first year, he only had 6 draft picks, but he's got several of them starting from the last 2 years that make up a nice core. Now, the big question is Brian Callahan and the coaching staff going forward. And I got to believe Carthon and the front office has convinced Amy to be patient. We can't just be changing out coaches every year. But going forward, what I would do is in free agency, I would get a veteran right tackle and a veteran quarterback. I wouldn't probably pay Sam Darnold. You're going to have to pay him a big contract. But like a Derek Carr, I wouldn't get Aaron Rodgers. And then in the draft, unless you are absolutely in love with Shedeur Sanders, who everybody thinks would fit Callahan's offense better, I would not take one of them quarterbacks. I would probably take Abdul Carter because they sorely need an edge rusher. That's one of their big needs. And then maybe get a quarterback in the later rounds if you like a Jackson Dart or somebody like that. But it's just unfortunate that we're one of the worst teams in the league this year, and it's just not a very good draft. So, they just one of the 12 franchises in the NFL that's never won a Super Bowl. They're family-owned, and they're still trying to figure it out. We have not had a franchise quarterback since Steve McNair.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that the Tennessee Titans are losing. This isn't, and I agree with, there's a lot I disagree with, but let's focus on what I do agree with. And I think that I talked about it for the last few weeks is that this team perpetually has the worst timing of any team. This is the worst time to have a bad season, to need something in the draft, right? Like the players in the draft are so thin at the top of the draft. I mean, the good news is, and it's something that we kind of talked about but haven't, you have the second pick in every round.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that second round pick is probably going to be good. That's very good value. So I would love for them to figure out a way to get their original third back somehow. But like at the end of the day, your fourth round picks, your fifth round picks are always going to be the second best player theoretically in that round. And that's really good. The problem is that first round is just, this is bad timing to have the top 2 picks in the first round. Yeah,
I think the conversation it falls on quarterback just because the Levis experiment over last year of some change. And I'm going to use an example of the franchise that's kind of the poster child right now for building things up, and that's Detroit Lions. And I go back before all this, before Goff started turning this thing around with pieces being placed around him. Matthew Stafford was a perennial Pro Bowler, had Hall of Fame numbers. They have also had Herman Moore and Megatron and Barry Sanders, and they've had people. They've had talent. They had one of the best offensive lines in football, but yet never won the big game. And my point in saying that is, and they've had some very good defensive players as well. My point in saying that is, there's a thing, a synergy of a team and a culture of a franchise, and that all plays a part. The Patriots, when free agents would go there, and I talking to friends and things went there was this culture, this established culture. You fit in or you out of there. And that was a winning culture that they built up, right? And then they lost it somewhere down the line, and they're trying to get it back. My point in saying that all is just because you get the quarterback doesn't mean all of a sudden you start winning football games. It helps, but you got to establish that winning tradition, that winning culture, that belief. And it starts with having consistency as opposed to keep starting over.
That's also why I'm a big proponent of keeping Callahan and Rand Carthon and letting them see this rebuild through. Because even though they didn't really advertise in neon signs, this was a rebuild year. Yeah. And that's not just because they were losing. You can also be in the NFL, there is a possibility to do something called a rebuild on the fly. Something Braden and I talked about a few times on our podcast and stuff is like the NFL allows you to do a rebuild on the fly where you can remain competitive, but you're rebuilding your team. That did not work out for the Tennessee Titans this year because that's what they were kind of doing. They were kind of rebuilding on the fly where they're trying to bring in some players, remain competitive, win some games, and their season lived and died on the shoulders of Will Levis, and it died.
The trap door opened up under
it.
It
did. Yeah. I mean, and that's just sometimes how it happens. So they got their answer at quarterback. Now it's time to find their answer at quarterback and keep pushing on with the rebuild.
Well, and where I understand where people are coming from, because it's inevitable. You have 3 wins with 1 game to go. People want to clean house. People want this person fired and that person fired. I understand that that's the only thing to stand on with that argument right now is for the sake of consistency, for the sake of continuity, for the sake of trying to build something and see something out. Because it is hard to pinpoint any result or improvement in any certain area to hang your hat on and say, see this.
There's improvements, but they're so minor.
Right.
And that's what sucks.
And when you do see an improvement, something else drops off drastically, right? Like special teams, credit where it's due. It got shored up. Special teams has not been a big problem for weeks.
I've been trying to tell you guys about special teams.
But then the run defense has a historically bad, not just a historically bad, something this franchise has not done since the early 60s last week, giving up 335 yards on the ground to the Colts. It feels like every week the trap door has opened under something, and they'll fix one hole, and then something else drops off drastically, whether it's run defense, special teams, or, a turnover meltdown at the quarterback position. So,
but that to me, that goes back to what I said about that culture of a team. Like, I go back to when we won, and I sound like the old guy right now, but if we were struggling offensively, the defense picked us up. They kept us in it, and then we found a way to win the game at the end. You gave us the ball at the end. We believed that we were going to score.
Yeah, Blaine talks about it all the time how McNair would come over to the defense and said, I got you guys. You get the ball back, I got you guys.
One more shot. That's it. And that was just in us. Like, I've said this even about the Super Bowl. I don't believe anybody on our sideline or in that huddle thought we weren't going to go the length of the field and score on that drive. It was just, we had done it so many times. We believed it, and we literally did up until I came up a yard short. But seriously, that's just how we were bred. That's how we believed. That's how we felt. It was a cultural thing in that locker room. And when you come in it, you feel it. You either embrace it or get on. And you embrace that. You find your role within that. And I don't know if they have that right now. They don't have that quote unquote culture as, okay, this is what we are, who we are. This is what we do. It's, like you said, you plug this hole, here's this other one. Dang, I got to patch this one up now. Oh, here we go. I got to patch this one up. And they're doing patch jobs right now as opposed to here's that culture. And you can't keep starting over to create a culture. You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at with it. And
the hardest thing to do in the NFL is create a winning culture in a losing season.
It is.
But that's what they're trying to do.
That's what they're trying to do. But I think to that point, why I believe Callahan will be back next year, regardless what happens Sunday. And again, I could be totally wrong because it is a business and it is about money. And they do got a stadium that's opening up right there. I believe she believes, or will, I mean, she believes that I'm going to speak for her, is thinking long game as far as a business. I need to build something. And if I continue to replace and rehire, all that stuff, that doesn't breed confidence from a standpoint of a fan, let alone, the players in that locker room.
This team has a ton of needs, right? We've been talking about it all season and all show: quarterback, tackle, edge, receiver, all these things. So the idea of adding head coach, general manager to that list of needs,
it'd be exciting for us.
It'd be
terrible for the team.
Talk shows would be great.
Yeah, it'd be terrible for the team.
And it would give fans that adrenaline rush. But I think it would set you even further back from where you currently are.
And then you could strike lightning in a bottle. You make that change, get the right GM, the right head coach. All of a sudden,
but those chances are always much slimmer than people think.
Exactly. And I think we all hope to have that one lightning strike in the bottle, and it just doesn't happen. The McVay to LA Super Bowl champ
It always looks more like this before it gets better.
Yes.
Like, that's what people don't understand.
Yes.
And that's why
It's always the darkest before the dawn.
And I want to build on, I know we're probably going to the break, so I want to build on something when we come back about what you were talking about.
All right, 615-737-1045. And we have phone calls to get to as well. We are with you for another half hour until 6:30 as the Titans fall in Jacksonville 20-13. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Elite Company on 104.5 The Zone. 30 more minutes of Titans Talkback on this Sunday. We are taking you right up until Westwood One pregame coverage of Sunday Night Football begins at 6:30 between Commanders and Falcons at Northwest Stadium. Things getting interesting in Minnesota as the Packers have just scored and gotten the 2-point conversion to cut the Minnesota lead to 27-18 over 6 minutes to play. So some implications in that one. If the Vikings blow this lead and lose, then the Lions would clinch the 1 seed in the NFC tomorrow night with a win over the Niners on Monday Night Football. But we're here to talk Titans, 615-737-1045. We've got some calls to get to. Remember, the Titans trust their home stadium to League Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems, and they can protect your home too. Your next play, visit LeagueCompany.com. League Company, all you need. Just a couple more chances to chime in. Talk to Dr. Kevin Dyson, Zach Lyons, and myself, Lucas Panzica. Tim from McMinnville is up next. Hey, Tim.
Hey there. Hey, if you was the GM for the Titans, would you pick quarterback or would you go offensive line this year or defensive pass rush? If you was a GM and the head coach for the Tennessee Titans.
Thanks for the call, Tim. We've been talking about it throughout the show. The Titans currently hold the number 2 pick in the draft as it stands today. If they were to lose next week, they would hold at least the number 2 pick in the draft. If the Patriots were to beat the Bills, who are expected to rest some starters next week, the Titans would move up to number 1. But I just say that because I assume the answer to Tim's question has a lot to do with where you're drafting.
Yeah, I'm not drafting offensive linemen in the first round. I mean, that's just, and now, depending on where they're in the draft and, there's still more information you have to gather about all these draft prospects and everything and what they're looking for in free agency. But right now, I would put their needs at quarterback and edge. But I could be talked into either way they decide to go. I think they're both equally important. And I think the talent level of Abdul Carter is so much more than talent level of Shadur Sanders. But it's not that big of a difference, as probably as I just made it sound, but it is a difference enough to make me entertain going best player available over the quarterback personally if I was a GM.
I think it depends where you end up. If you end up at 2 and who's ahead of you, if it stays in the current state where it's a Pats 1 year 2, I think they go Hunter. I think you end up going quarterback. Because they're probably going to be ranked 1 and 2 and coming up in this draft, and based on immediate needs and what we assume is going to happen as far as parting ways with Levis and Rudolph. So I think that plays a part in it. But that doesn't mean that they may not go a different route because say the Pats end up at 1 but trade down to 3-4 or trade down to 3 with whoever's at 3 right now. I forget who's even at 3 right now. It's Giants, who also need a quarterback, and they may go to 1 and get Sanders. Well, then that changes my perspective at 2 and who I might go. I might go Travis Hunter, but that's because I see him as multifaceted. He can do a lot of different things. But again, I think it's a little early to make that assumption. I think there's a lot of things that they can find help in and find depth in and immediate impact for this franchise going forward. But I think it just depends, man, who's ahead of them, who's right behind them.
Well, there's no doubt if the Titans do finish with the top 2 pick, it's going to be all about the quarterback for this fan base for the next few months in terms of what we're hearing here on 104.5 The Zone. Larissa is up next in Nashville. Hey, Larissa.
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Happy holidays. Happy everything.
Same to you.
Our positive light right here.
Just be happy, honey.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this season clearly stinks. And people have this idea, and again, my very humble opinion, that Jador will come in like a superhero and just like everything's going to winning will start. You could see the effort today. And yeah, it is painful to watch, but you can tell that the effort is there and clearly conversations need to be had. I mean, I don't think anyone has any debate on that. And, there's talent there. The guys are fighting. But I do have a question for you, Mason. Like, if you were in the locker room at this time, what would you tell yourself to inspire yourself in regards to just keep moving forward.
Thanks,
and I'm
Larissa.
curious about that. But I really, Titans fans, don't give up. And I don't want the coach to be fired. We got to put down some roots, but clearly conversations need to be had. And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you, guys. Happy everything. Sorry if I offended anyone.
No offense.
Happy New Year.
It's one, you're self-motivated when you get to that level anyway. You always got to put the best product on it. What's the turnover rate? Like 25-30% turnover rate of the rosters. So you don't know where you're going to be from when you get to the next. The NFL is not for long for a reason, right? You don't know. So you have to put a product on the field to keep your name relevant and have an opportunity to extend your career as long as possible. So that's what keeps you motivated, self-motivated. I think what you tell yourself is, I got to go out here and ball out, regardless, because they're probably on the assumption, a lot of people is, they're going to be doing some house cleaning this year. There's going to be some people who are going to be salary cap casualties, who have bonuses that are not going to make it, that are free agents, unrestricted and restricted. There's going to be tenure. There's going to be some things, and you got to be able to display your value in that regard. So it's going to be it's one of those things where just because the season's coming to the end, it's 30% turnover rate, and there's only 1,500 of these jobs. And if you break it down by position, there's an average of about 5 to 6 receivers on each roster. So that's 150 jobs-ish that you're talking about you want. So why would I give anything less than my best on the field, or at least effort,
One question I do have for you, Dice, and I guess you were not really in this situation, right? You played for some pretty good teams in your career. I don't think you ever were in a situation where it's week 16, 17, and you're on a team that's going to have the number 1 or 2 pick in the upcoming draft.
I've always kind of been in the middle,
Gotcha.
Fortunately.
I do understand, players that are on 1-year deals and nothing's guaranteed, and you're focused about yourself, right, and your situation and your career. You're not worried about what direction the Titans will go in terms of quarterback and where they're going to draft, who they're going to draft. But if you're a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, right, or like a Calvin Ridley, who is entrenched at this point, you're in a 4-year contract that you feel like, at least for the very foreseeable future, you're going to be in a certain place. I feel like it's much easier said than done to say, I don't worry about those things. That's their job. And that's fine. But I'm always so curious how much those guys are paying attention and have kind of their own biases on who they want their team to draft, right? If you're X star and you're a leader on this team and you're under contract, surely there's got to be something in you that is like a fan, right? That's saying, oh, I know that should work. I hope we end up with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two things with that. I think, yes, there's a level of fandom because we watch college football and still guys compete. We bet amongst each other.
Yeah.
There's a love for college football that you have, right? Even though you're in the pros. So yes, there is a level of I like him. He could help us. But there's the other part of it too. The business side of it is, I looked at that draft board. Dang, they drafted 2 receivers. What's that mean? Oh, I got to come with it. I'm not going to be vindictive. I'm going to help the young guy, but also he's trying to take my job. And so there's a level of competitiveness that comes with that too. So it's both sides of it because they are drafting to replace you, right? Essentially, that's the idea, or add depth, but eventually they need guys that can play in case you leave or get hurt or whatever. So you pay attention because you want to see what they're doing. What's their emphasis on? If they come in, you use Big Jeff, and they draft 3 big D tackles, they drafted 1 last year, but they draft 3. You might be thinking, I'm getting towards the end of my career, my contract, my salary cap number's going up. I might become a salary cap guy. I got to show my worth. I got to go out here. Somebody's going to pick me up, that sort of thing. So it's a business. We never forget that. You never forget that's a business as much as you want to be able to be a fan in the moment.
Let's go back to the phones here. Caleb is up next. Hey, Caleb.
How's it going, by the way, y'all? So
Great.
I actually, I've been a fan of our Titans since, I was little. I remember being over them, based on top of the world when we went to the Super Bowl back, in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. However, this seems like, this isn't, to me anyway, the worst we've been. It's close. But it's like the 2014-15 season, I feel like, was worse than this one was by at least a little. What do you guys think as far as who should we – obviously, I feel like if they should keep Callahan and Carthon, obviously. Who do you guys think that they should get rid of as far as our team? And also, I do not personally feel like our draft class, if you're looking for quarterback, would you be better off in the draft or free agency? Because I haven't heard a lot of raving reviews on, the quarterback draft class for this year coming up.
Thanks for the call, Caleb.
Listen, I'm a big proponent of attacking both at the quarterback position because you're going to need two quarterbacks. I mean, you don't want to bring back Mason Rudolph. You really don't want to bring back Mason Rudolph. And likely the Will Levis thing is going to result in an agent saying, hey, we want out of here, which is fine. Totally understandable. That's how the NFL works. Happens all the time. And there's maybe a possibility that Will Levis stays on the roster, but if you bring in, then you kind of probably have to go veteran quarterback, I guess. I don't know if you'd bring in Shadur and have your quarterback room be Shadur and Will Levis or Cam Ward and Will Levis, right? Or any rookie and Will Levis, right?
Yeah, because we thought about that with Malik this year.
Right.
Like it was like that seems kind of
weird.
Yeah.
I would also go to this. Oh man, what was his other question
about staff changes? Potential
staff changes. This will be my most unpopular opinion on this show, on any of my shows, that I will continue to say they should not fire Colt Anderson because Colt Anderson has shown that he can get the job done with right parts, and they kind of gave him like half a bag of groceries to cook a 4-course meal with, and he couldn't get it done. And you go back and you watch film, it's a lot of situations where it's player driven errors. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean that everybody gets off scot-free? Probably not. Like, I look at guys that maybe weren't on this staff or that were on the prior staff that were holdovers as maybe some sacrificial lambs, right? Like, you could point to Chris Harris. Maybe they get rid of Chris Harris because they got Steven Jackson. Steven Jackson's coaching defensive backs or whatever, and they're like, well, Steven Jackson did a good enough job while you were away for personal reasons, so maybe we get rid of Chris Harris. Anthony Levine, who's the assistant special teams coach, the guy that they didn't fire Colt Anderson. If he was so good, they probably would have fired Colt Anderson, right? Like, so maybe that guy who's a holdover sees the door. So, like, I think it's going to be like minor changes like that. You could probably throw Nick Holt's name out there, maybe Bo Hardegree's name, but I think those guys likely stay because I don't really think those guys were the issue.
Both play callers are here.
Yeah,
is your opinion?
Yeah, Bernard Wilson and Brian Callahan. Yeah, you expect there to be some level of change, right?
Yeah.
To the coaching staff.
And maybe there's some scouts that are fired and stuff like that. I think the people that are going to be shown the door aren't the people that everybody wants to be shown the door.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Well, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in that, and I don't know if this is true or not. I'm just throwing another scenario. Is there a scenario where the staff doesn't change, but they bring somebody in?
Yeah, they could.
Like a consultant, like Dean Pease did here, or who was that year? Offense?
Schwartz,
yeah.
Schwartz on defense. Yeah,
Schwartz. Who was that? We did one year with offense too. Had some eyes on there. I forgot Norm Chow or something.
Under Vrabel?
Yeah, no, it wasn't Vrabel. It was somebody else. But anyway, it was under Malarkey, I think. But anyway, my point is, could that be a scenario where they bring in somebody as another pair of eyes to help Callahan in that regard?
I mean, technically, you don't have a passing game coordinator for the offense. So technically you could find, like, if someone were to get fired, if some coach were to get fired, I'm trying to think, like Doug Peterson or Press Taylor. So Press Taylor, is a guy that you could bring in as passing game coordinator, right? And maybe that doesn't really help things, but that's a new addition to the staff, a different voice, another guy who has kind of gone back and forth, calling plays between him and Doug Peterson. So there, stuff like that.
Peterson would be interesting to me.
You can do that too.
He has a lot of success in his football, in his league as a play caller, and a lot of experience. He's been a head coach. He understands. He's been a head coach who's been successful. He's been a head coach that's been fired and probably about to be again. You talking about somebody that you can collaborate with and work some things through. That's an interesting concept.
Don't look now, but the Packers just cut the Vikings lead to 2. This game was a 17-point Minnesota lead with 6 minutes to play, and it is now 27-25 Vikings.
Matt, talk about revisionist history. Choosing Mike Vrabel over Matt LaFleur, That's what should have been done. Matt LaFleur is just a damn good head coach.
Yeah. Well,
turned out pretty good for him.
Was Vrabel's coordinator.
Yeah. Well, he interviewed for the job too. It was him, Mike Vrabel, Steve Wilkes were the final three.
That's right. And then Vrabel brought him on as coordinator.
Yeah.
They kind of worked that out.
When we come back, take a look at what's next, the regular season finale for the Titans. Take these last few of your phone calls and wrap things up going until 6:30. It's Titans Talkback presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone. Man, quick show today. Flew by. Unexpected.
Yeah.
For a 3-13 record and a 20-13 loss, but appreciate all of you guys chiming in, especially on a holiday weekend. Hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year coming up in a couple of days. Looking forward to the college football playoff action. I know there's plenty of people in this state that have disavowed the college football playoff after the first round, but I'm ready, man. I'm excited to watch Boise, Penn State on New Year's Eve and all the other games on Wednesday.
My wife and her entire side of the family are Michigan fans. So my family, her family got together last year and watched that game. Did not end up well for us, and also cost Dad a trip to Disney World, and then with one of my nieces. And then but this year things are looking up for Alabama versus Michigan.
A house divided for the ReliaQuest Bowl. New Year's Day. Yeah. 615-737-1045. Just a couple more phone calls to get to here. Adam in Portland is next. Hey, Adam.
Couple things, man. Number one, Happy New Year to you fellas.
You too.
It's gonna be a good one, man. Even for Titans fans, like it's gonna be our year, like to bounce back in some sort of manner. I will say I've been really hard on Shea. He's kind of turned into a nice player. Like I could see him getting better. If you want to pick a spot somewhere on the team where he goes, that guy gotten better. Tig looks like he got better to me. The big negative, I'm trying to see a world in an adverse universe where Colt Anderson is not fired. It's the craziest thing to think about to me. I hope Zach's wrong on that. That's so dumb. Like, just because if you were to have a neighbor, just say you had a neighbor, right, and he lets his dog out and he messes in your yard every day for like 15 straight weeks, and then the one day you just didn't see him do it. I'm sure he still messed in the yard, but you didn't see it. Is he a good neighbor? No, he's not a good neighbor. Get rid of him. Like, Zach, you're crazy for this, man. Get rid of that guy.
Thanks for the call, Adam.
I knew it would be unpopular, but the difference is between that analogy and what's happening is that we can actually see it got better. Just because I didn't see the crap in my yard, that's about it. He almost got there with the analogy. He's almost there, but like we could see that it got better because it's players over plays. You have to have good players on special teams. You have to have a special violent nature on special teams. And I understand it's a very unpopular narrative to say that Cole Anderson should not be fired, but I talked about it all year, how the players have been mainly the issue on special teams, and it's looking like that was true, so I got to keep riding the wave of positivity here.
I'll be interested to see what he does. I think if he gets fired, it's more optics than anything.
I
think that's exactly what I was about to say. I think there's a sense that I was saying from Amy's standpoint, I want to see what are you going to do? We got to be better. Here's
someone's head's got to roll, and that's an easy guy to point to.
Yeah.
Even though defense is seeming really easy lately, but I would not fire Denard Wilson. By the way,
but they always had the crutch of injuries.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
I agree with you that they made a lot of roster moves, especially with the initial 53.
Yeah,
like the perfect example was cutting Hassan Haskins in favor of Julius Chestnut. Why? Julius Chestnut is a better running back. He's better at running the football than Hassan Haskins.
We haven't seen evidence of this in the regular season, but sure.
Right, but they like Chestnut better as a running back than Haskins. Haskins, far better special teamer than Julius Chestnut. And I think a lot of Titans fans got conditioned too during the Vrabel years. The pendulum was all the way on the other side with how much they valued special teams, keeping guys on the roster that fans were sick of seeing on the roster because they weren't going to contribute on offense or defense, but because of what they did on special teams, the pendulum kind of swung all the way over here. And now you kind of wish you had Hassan Haskins playing special teams because one of those punt blocks, I believe, was Julius Chestnut. Right, in the first 2 weeks of the season, what was attributed to Julius Chestnut,
the second one,
not getting a block against the Jets. So I see what there are instances of that 100%. But at the end of the day, for half the season, maybe more than half, he was the special teams coordinator of the worst, the most bottoming out unit in the league.
Didn't help him any.
Yeah. So that might just be what it is. We'll see. Tyler in Nashville is next. Hey, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys. I'll make a couple quick points and hang up and listen. But first of all, look at Detroit in 2021, right? And they 3-13 finished off the season 3-13, but there was a culture change. You could see it. And go this year. Look earlier in the season to the Jets game when Will Levis did that boneheaded. He threw the ball. He's kind of like falling. He threw it towards the sideline. Look at the way that Callahan talked to Levis. And tell me that that's a supportive place for a young quarterback. It's not. Levis did some stupid stuff, but you know what young quarterbacks do? Stupid stuff. So if you bring in Shedeur Sanders, you bring in Cam Ward, whatever, this is not the environment for them. It's not. Agents will probably know that. And I'll tell you, what we're looking for is generational talent. The generational talent is Liam Cohen down in Tampa Bay. That's all I'll say. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks for the call, Tyler.
Yeah, there is something to say about that. I think that, massaging the emotions and psyche of your play caller and knowing the difference of, and that comes with experience too, knowing how I can approach you, Lucas, might be different than I approach you, Zach, right? I can probably scream at you, Zach, and be like, you, da-da-da, but I might have to be more cerebral with you, play the mind games, and challenge you in a different way. And
I'm a softie, Dice. You start screaming at me, I'm out of here.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying? But I think that
you bribe Lucas with food and you get what you need.
Correct. You can scream at me all you want.
That's what you should have done with Levis, bribed him with some mayonnaise. I don't know. But I'm just saying, but I think there's something to that too, is knowing the talent within and how to. You can't talk to everybody the same. And it's just like you raise your kids different.
But Brian Callahan knows that because he's worked with Tim Tebow, Brock Osweiler, Peyton Manning, Matt Stafford, Derek Carr, Joe Burrow, Jake Browning, Andy Dalton. I mean, like all those are almost wildly different people.
Yeah, and I'm sure he knows Levis. That's probably why he was like, getting on to him.
Yeah, and that, I will say, just to side with Callahan for the moment. That wasn't a, hey, dumb quarterbacks do some bad things. That was like a next level, right? You were coming off the week.
We just told you.
Right. That was somehow one-upping yourself in the worst way from what happened in week one. So I almost give Callahan a little bit of a leeway for losing his mind a little bit there in week two. But no, enjoy everybody chiming in today. Appreciate everybody talking to us and giving us your reaction after a 7-point loss in Jacksonville. Last thing we got to do is the Eurofix look ahead. As we look ahead to next week's opponent, I remind you that Eurofix repairs everything European that you drive and below dealer pricing. ASC certified technicians, a local company that has serviced Middle Tennessee for over 2 decades. Visit EurofixOnline.com. Next week, the Titans come back home to Nissan Stadium to wrap up the regular season wearing the Oilers uniforms against the Houston Texans. That is a week from today, 11 o'clock, Titans countdown. 12 o'clock, the kickoff with Mike Keith and Coach Mack right here on 104.5 The Zone on every Titans radio station. I mean, I suppose the moment of truth, guys, will be, if the Titans were to lose to Houston next week, we will be waiting on bated breath on Monday. We don't think a change will be made, but as we've said all year, all bets are off in a 3-win season.
Best case scenario for Tennessee Titans and Tennessee Titans fans. Tennessee Titans lose to the Texans 35-30. You score 30 points, you lose the game, but you score 30 points and you lose the game. So, you got both.
And then do the Patriots beat the Bills in this best case scenario?
That would be great. But, worst case scenario, you're still number 2 overall. So, 35-30. You get the proof of concept kind of, deal going. You got the 30 points up on the board. You made it competitive the whole way through. It can't be like 38-30 like the Colts. It's got to be competitive.
Yeah.
And maybe the Texans just get the ball last. And there you go.
Texans come in on a 2-game slide. They will have 11 days of rest after their offense was shut out by the Ravens. I don't know if you guys watched any of the Christmas Day games. Neither competitive. And Ravens 31, Texans 2. Beyonce at halftime was the most redeeming thing about that game.
My goodness, part of the game.
Derrick Henry was pretty good as well. But Texans are playing probably their worst football at the moment. And do they rest starters? Quickly, Dice, former player perspective. Do you want to play in this game?
If you play
you've clinched the division. There's nothing to be played for. You are hosting in the playoffs. You've clinched the division, but you're on a 2-game slide, regular season finale. You say you always wanted to play in these type of games, no matter the scenario?
Yeah, I'll say the scenario. Somebody like me, role player, yes. Eddie George, no.
Sure.
Steve McNair, no.
So C.J. Stroud, do you think he plays next Sunday?
No.
Davis Mills coming to Nissan Stadium?
I think they play. Well, first off, the Tennessee Titans are awful against backup quarterbacks, so they better hope C.J. Stroud's playing or it could be a blowout. I think they're going to play because I think D'Amico Ryans is going to look at we have sucked these last 2 weeks. We need to build some momentum. So I kind of think that maybe he's going to play him.
All right. We'll see. That'll do it for us today. Titans fall to the Jags 20-13. As I remind you, Titans radio coverage is produced by Philip Noel and Brad Willis. The studio producer is Joseph Bonanno. The promotions director is Rich Ferris. Director of sales, Hunter Rice. General manager, Allison Warren. Operations manager, Paul Mason. And the executive producer of Titans radio is Rhett Bryan. We'll be talking about it all week right here on 104.5 The Zone. Hope you'll join us. But for Dr. Kevin Dyson and Zach Lyons and our producer, Jackson Williams, I'm Lucas Panzica saying good night. This has been Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone. Westwood One coverage of Sunday Night Football coming up next.